Chapter 176, Part 1. Counting the TIE particles separated from Jane's body, Loki now holds 4 infinite gems in his hand. As for the remaining 2, one is the time gem hidden in the eye of Agamotto, and the other is the soul gem hidden on the Vamr star. In fact, Loki did not have the idea of collecting all the infinite gems like Thanos did. But these infinite gems were sent into his hand one after another. As the saying goes, if you plant flowers intentionally, they will not bloom, but if you plant willows unintentionally, they will create shade. I can only say that fate is really wonderful. Putting the TIE particles and the other 3 infinite gems into the king's treasure, for safekeeping, Loki took out another piece of jewelry and gave it to Jane Foster. You accept this thing. I used magic to enchant it. As long as you wear it close to your body, you can gain powerful and fast self-healing ability. No matter how serious the damage is, before the magic power is exhausted, you will be able to it can restore you to your original self. And I also added a magic circle on it that can absorb the surrounding free natural energy to supplement the magic power consumption during use. So as long as you don't die repeatedly in a short period of time, you don't need to worry about running out of magic power. Failure problem. But when faced with the treasure sent by Loki, Jane refused repeatedly and refused to accept it at all. No, I can't accept such a valuable thing. Loki shook his head and said, for you, this may be a very expensive gift, but for me, it is just a very ordinary magic weapon, and it has no value at all. Besides, if you follow Thor, a reckless man, you will inevitably encounter some dangerous things. If Thor can't be with you because of other things at that time, this magic weapon can at least protect your personal safety. Or you can think about it in another way. Even when Thor is not with you, your safety can be guaranteed. Then when he is fighting the enemy, does he not have to worry about your safety? Thor also joined in at this time and persuaded, yes, Jane, just accept it. My brother has a lot of this kind of thing, and it is not as precious as you think. And after you put it on, if when something happens and I can't be with you, I can deal with these troubles with peace of mind. After hearing what both Loki and Thor said, Jane finally accepted the gift from Loki after some ideological struggle and solemnly thanked Loki. But after seeing such a good thing, how could Daisy, a clever little girl, miss it? After she saw Jane accepting the thing, she walked up to Loki and asked Loki flatteringly, Master Immortal, you see, I am also a good friend of Thor. If I encounter any danger, he will definitely be very sad. So, well, you see. Can you also give me one of this treasure? Loki glanced at the little girl, then looked at his brother's expression. In the end, without saying anything, he took out 2 more magic weapons and threw them to Daisy in front of him and Eric Selvey, who was not far away. Dr. Gu. Brother, you owe me a big favor this time. There happens to be a troublesome thing that needs your help in the near future. You can't refuse then. Thor patted his chest and promised, don't worry, don't you know what kind of person Thor am? I will leave it here now. No matter how troublesome it is, you can come to me when the time comes. I will definitely done beautifully for you. Okay, I've taken note of what you said, and your affairs here have been dealt with. I was going to meet an old friend, so I won't talk to you anymore. Goodbye. After saying that, Loki once again used his signature ability to fly Thor and disappeared from everyone's sight. On the other end, Ultron, who had left earlier than Loki, was hovering over the Atlantic Ocean to rest at the moment. After nearly an hour of flying at full speed, Ultron's steel body would not make him feel tired, but even a machine must dissipate heat. Otherwise, after it saw Loki and Thor turn around and run away, it would once again stage a drama where the flight system crashed halfway and fell into the Atlantic Ocean and became a drowned rat. It would be really shameless at all. But looking back on what happened just now, even if Ultron were asked to choose again, it would still make the exact same choice. After all, it is no longer a simple intelligent AI system, but the first intelligent life form on Earth that was born by chance. Since it is life, it is an instinct to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. In fact, even Ultron himself couldn't figure out why he had such a big reaction after seeing Loki's figure. Even before its control center made a decision, its body reacted first and turned around and ran away. You know, as an intelligent life form, Ultron, as long as it uploads its thoughts to the internet, even if its body is irreparably damaged, Ultron can replace it with a brand new body and reappear in this world. But when Ultron saw Loki, there was a feeling reminding him that once it was targeted by Loki, no matter where it was hidden in the internet, it would not be able to avoid Loki's attack on Zhao Nua, the butcher knife it wields. In other words, if it had not made a decisive decision and escaped in time, maybe it would have died. This kind of perception ability, which is similar to the human sixth sense, also fully demonstrates that Ultron is no longer as simple as a combination of a series of program codes and a mechanical body. As a real life form, at the life level, it may be a level higher than the human beings who created it. Because even though Loki has never seen his ability to use Death Eye, there is no detailed data about Loki. But Ultron predicted the huge threat that Loki could pose to it. This is definitely not something that any algorithm can do through calculation. Chapter 177, Part 1. Returning to Avengers Tower, Ultron did not alarm anyone. As for Tony, after he had a candlelight dinner with Pepper last night, he began his great cause of reproducing future generations for the continuation of human civilization. I won't go into the detailed process, it's indescribable. You know it's indescribable. Anyway, after several rounds of fighting and completely squeezing Tony dry, Pepper came to the office with a glowing face early this morning. Various Stark Industrial Affairs and the business reports of the disaster control company under Tony's name were all handled properly by Pepper with a work efficiency far higher than before. And Tony had already flown from New York to London, and then from London back to New York, until Ultron arrived, and he still hadn't recovered from the madness last night and was still lying in the bedroom with his hands on his waist. Ultron, which learned about the situation through various smart devices, immediately changed its original action plan. According to Ultron's original plan, after it went out to obtain the target items, it would leave Avengers Tower with the entire steel army it had created since last night. Then hide in a secret facility of SHIELD in New Jersey, wait until the problem of their inability to generate Hellfire alone is solved, and then realize the cleansing of the World 960 and complete its mission of world peace. But the problem is, Ultron not only failed to get the target item that he originally set out to get this time, but he was also frightened half to death by Loki, who unexpectedly appeared at his destination. This made Ultron realize that maybe now is not the best time for it to jump out. If you want to achieve your ultimate goal, you must first solve the problem of Avengers. The concept of Avengers defined by Ultron not only includes the 5 original members of Iron Man, Captain of the United States, Thor, Stranger in Disguise, Black Widow, and Hawkeye. It also covers the corresponding personal relationships of the 5 people in the first generation. For example, Loki, who scared him so much, is Thor's younger brother, a little fanboy whom the Captain of the United States recently met, Sam, who once participated in the Falcon Project Wilson. The other is Iron Man Tony Stark's good brother, War Machine Colonel Rhodes. These are the people who will almost certainly help the Avengers when they encounter a crisis, and they are also among the big troubles defined by Ultron. In addition, even people who may become superheroes or join Avengers in the future are actually included in the list of troublesome people that Ultron must solve. As for why Ultron knows who may become superheroes in the future and who may join the Avengers, we have to mention the SHIELD secret facility in New Jersey that Ultron originally planned to use as a base for the Iron Army. Ultron discovered some very interesting things in this hidden facility. First of all, although this secret facility apparently belongs to S.H.I.E.L.D., it has actually been secretly occupied by Hydra personnel lurking inside S.H.I.E.L.D. Secondly, in the underground base of this secret facility, there is actually a being who can be said to be the predecessor of Ultron, Dr. Arnim Zola. It was this talented scientist who once worked for Red Skull and was later recruited to S.H.I.E.L.D. for Project Paperclip, who planned Hydra's plan to parasitize SHIELD and continue to grow and develop. However, Dr. Zola was diagnosed with a terminal illness in 1972, so he transferred his consciousness to the most advanced supercomputer at the time and hid it in the SHIELD secret facility C in New Jersey. If it were not limited by the hardware level at the time, maybe Dr. Zola could really be 40 years ahead of Ultron and become the first truly intelligent life form. But these are not the most important things that Ultron discovered from this hidden facility. The most valuable thing to Ultron was the computer he found that contained Dr. Zola's consciousness, a set of information called Insight Project, Big Data Observation and Analysis Algorithms. By accurately collecting each person's behavioral data, this algorithm can accurately predict everyone's future. And for such a good thing, Ultron will never let it go easily. It first swallowed up Dr. Zola's consciousness data, just like it swallowed up JRVIS before. Before acquiring the consciousness of Dr. Zola, Ultron, as an intelligent life form, could rely on massive data sources, OBC, and powerful hardware computing capabilities to make himself a being comparable to the top human geniuses on the Earth. But after annexing Dr. Zola's consciousness, all this changed. Dr. Zora's consciousness taught Ultron how to think like a true genius. It is not difficult to achieve this goal. Ultron believes that as long as Tony knows about S.H.I.E.L.D.'s actions, Tony will never let go of this perfect opportunity to conduct actual combat tests with the Iron Soldiers. If Ultron's original powerful calculation can be regarded as 99% sweat, then what Dr. Zola's consciousness brought to Ultron was the last 1% of inspiration it lacked. As a result, Ultron must provide some help to SHIELD in SHIELD's upcoming plan for HYDRA. According to Ultron's original plan, these 3 space carriers will serve as a hidden hand left by it. When it launches the Great Purge, it will unite with its steel army to achieve true world peace. This gave Ultron an opportunity to take advantage of it. It didn't even need to bypass S.H.I.E.L.D.'s firewall. It directly borrowed Stark Industries' account permissions and openly entered the control centers of the 3 space carriers, and then completed it easily. A copy of the Insight Project algorithm. After all, these 3 aerospace carriers are equipped with various weapons that can be said to be the most advanced on Earth today. Now the opportunity to take these 3 aerospace carriers into his own hands is right in front of Ultron. Ultron, how could you give up? As for the next step, Ultron only needs to do a good job of lurking. On the one hand, he disguises himself as JRVIS and continues to be Tony's butler and assistant. After annexing Dr. Zora's consciousness, Ultron also obtained all of Dr. Zora's memory data and learned that the complete Project Insight algorithm had been integrated into the SHIELD space carrier by HYDRA. Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, but that 1% inspiration is often more important than 99% perspiration. Road. But now that he has arrived inside the control center of the space carrier, there is absolutely no way Ultron can leave just like that. What a coincidence. After the alien war ended, one of the conditions negotiated between the Avengers and SHIELD was that Tony needed to help SHIELD build 2 brand new space carriers and to renovate the completed one. Upgrade transformation. Before the real time comes, stay with Tony and use the resources of Stark Industries to secretly develop your own steel army. After implanting its own duplication program into the control systems of the 3 space carriers, Ultron exited their control centers with satisfaction. But now that the plan has changed, Ultron must ensure that these 3 space carriers can continue to be kept intact in the hands of SHIELD and will not be controlled by Hydra. Chapter 178, Part 1. How about it? I told you I didn't lie to you. If these 2 children are not good candidates for learning magic, then there will be very few people on the entire Earth who are qualified to learn magic. Kamartaj, Sorcerer Supreme Holy Place. Loki's hands were resting on the shoulders of the 2 teenagers beside him, and he proudly introduced these 2 people to the Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One in front of him. And these 2 people are none other than Howard's adopted son and daughter, Pietro and Wanda, brother and sister. A week ago, Loki took the opportunity to catch up with Howard and informed Howard of the twins' abilities, and agreed to bring the 2 of them to Kamartaj a week later. Learn magic knowledge systematically. Today is the day they agreed on. During this week, Pietro and Wanda successfully obtained the consent of their adoptive mother Maria and solved all kinds of troubles. So, Loki came to Howard's house as promised and brought the 2 of them to Kamartaj and to the Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One. However, facing the arrival of Pietro and Wanda, Ancient One showed a wry smile on his face. This is not because the twins have poor magic abilities. As Loki said, if these 2 children are not good at learning magic, then there will be few people on the entire Earth who are qualified to learn magic. What troubled the Ancient One was that the twins' innate abilities were too powerful, especially when Loki used the mind gem to awaken their ability magic and also help them perform a wave of strengthening. Logically speaking, a student's strong ability should be a great blessing for the teacher Ancient One. After all, in order to find a suitable successor, the Ancient One changed his fate and extended his life for thousands of years. However, there is a difference between ability and ability. If Loki and Ancient One are all-rounders in the field of magic, they can easily understand the mystery of any magic after seeing it. Then brother and sister Pietro and Wanda are geniuses who are good at heresy. Their ability in the field of magic is almost entirely focused on their awakening ability magic. It is difficult to learn and master other magics. Even if you learn it, you will not be able to reach a very sophisticated level, and you will not be able to exert the full effect of this magic. It was precisely because of this that the Ancient One had a wry smile on his face after confirming the twins' abilities with his own eyes, because it was not an easy task to teach the siblings Pietro and Wanda. If it were an ordinary magic apprentice, even if it was slightly inferior in ability, Ancient One would not find it difficult to teach him. Because on how to cultivate a qualified occult magician, Kamartaj has accumulated thousands of years of teaching experience. Ancient One usually only needs to arrange the lessons step by step, so as long as this magic apprentice works hard enough, sooner or later he can become an official magician. If the magic apprentice's ability is very outstanding, then Ancient One can also teach students in accordance with their aptitude based on their own experience. After all, she was originally a super genius in the field of magic. But to teach special geniuses like Pietro and Wanda who can only continuously tap their potential in ability magic, then all the teaching methods used by Ancient One in the past and the proven successful experience will be invalidated. Ancient One must rediscover a teaching method that is only suitable for brother and sister Pietro and Wanda in the process of practice. This is undoubtedly a very labor-intensive task. But since Loki dared to bring the twins here, it means that he had already expected that the Ancient One would react like this today, and had prepared a way to deal with it. Loki first took the twins aside and asked them to calm down for a while, then came to the Ancient One and said, "Let's talk?" Ancient One glared at him angrily. "You didn't tell me last week that they awakened ability magic?" Being exposed in front of his little trick, Loki did not show any embarrassment but said confidently, "Doesn't this further prove their extraordinary ability? And don't forget, I also awakened ability magic and freezing. Now it's not easy to learn other systems of magic." "Zero, please give me flowers." Ancient One rolled his eyes. "Can that be the same? There are not many perverts like you in the entire universe." This time Loki was anxious. Don't accuse someone of their innocence out of thin air. Why am I a pervert? I'm just a little better than others. You can call me a loser, but I will never admit it. I am a pervert. Okay, don't change the subject. I'll make it clear to you directly. It's okay for these two to stay, but you really can't teach me. If you want to teach, you can go into battle yourself. Oh, don't be so heartless. You listen to me first, and then you decide whether you can teach me. Let me tell you, although you already know that they awaken ability magic, you still don't know what their ability magic is. Bar. As soon as Ancient One heard what Loki said, he knew that the other party was going to set a trap for him again. She knew that if she let Loki finish his words, the final result would be that she was convinced by Loki. But Loki is using an above-board conspiracy, unless the Ancient One can suppress his curiosity. But can she? She definitely can't. So now she not only won't stop Loki from talking, she even prays that Loki won't say half and leave half. Otherwise it will be too torture. Hee. I don't know, let me tell you. Pietro's awakening is ability magic and speed. And Wanda? Don't be so pretentious and tell me quickly. Ancient One urged. Wanda is awakening her ability magic, chaos. What? As soon as Loki finished speaking, the Ancient One's screams echoed throughout the holy place. If Pietro's ability magic, divine speed, had shocked Ancient One, but he was still able to maintain his composure on the surface. Then when she knew that Wanda had actually awakened the ability magic, chaos, all her reserve and face were gone. Forgot about it. Loki, I think we should discuss what kind of teaching plan can maximize the potential of these two children. Chapter 179, Part 1. We can't blame Ancient One for changing his face so quickly. It's actually the ability magic of these two siblings awakening that is so amazing. If Pietro and Wanda can finally convert 70% of their potential into reality, then Ancient One will feel it is worth it no matter how much they pay in the teaching process. One is a speedster who can reverse time, and the other is a chaos who can alter reality. In the future, there will be two powerful people like Kamar Taj, plus the future Sorcerer Supreme successor selected by the Ancient One with the Eye of Agamotto. This made Ancient One instantly feel that the future of their Kamar Taj was bright. Now that she has successfully convinced the Ancient One, just like what she just said, we should discuss how to teach the twins. Regarding this, I actually had a preliminary idea before I brought them here. But if I want to actually implement it, I need your cooperation. The Ancient One waved her hand, and now she didn't care about the trouble Loki said at all. No matter how big the trouble is, it's nothing compared to the benefits she can ultimately gain. If you have any difficulties, just ask them. As long as I can help, I will never refuse. With the Ancient One's promise, Loki didn't hold back and spoke out his thoughts about the twins. For Pietro's ability magic speed, my idea is to use the space gem in my hand and Kamar Taj's time gem to create an ultimate force that can affect space and time at the same time. This kind of force will not be consumed by Pietro's extreme running. On the contrary, every step of Pietro's running will constantly recharge this kind of force. As Pietro continues to run, the accumulated force will eventually form a new dimension in the universe, and Pietro will also become the master of this dimension, a dimension Mephisto. In other words, as Pietro continues to run, his speed will become faster and faster, his strength will become stronger, and he will eventually become a powerful being with at least the strength of level Godfather. And I would like to call this force that was born based on Pietro's ability magic and speed, with the help of the power of Space Gem and Time Gem, the Speed Force. Speed Force? After hearing Loki's idea, even the Ancient One, the Sorcerer Supreme, couldn't help but be speechless. Because once Loki's idea is successful, it will be equivalent to other magicians who have to read magic books every day to learn new magic, and then improve their proficiency through continuous practice, and can become stronger through hard practice. But Pietro just run constantly. As long as you run far enough and fast enough, you will become stronger and stronger. And because the speed force is not depleted and accumulates as Pietro runs, this means that there is no upper limit to Pietro's running speed, and even the speed of light is not Pietro's limit. As for the instructor Ancient One, there is no need to spend time thinking about how to improve Pietro's strength. He only needs to teach him how to properly use the power of the speed force. This level of teaching mission is undoubtedly much less intensive than Ancient One originally envisioned. It's not even much harder than the Ancient One teaching an elite magician. But, although Loki's idea is beautiful, it is not that simple to implement. How do you plan to make Pietro's ability magic and infinite gems perfectly compatible and compatible? What about transformation? The question of Ancient One really gets to the point. The compatibility and transformation of energies is the key to the final successful realization of the Speed Force. Faced with this problem, Loki could only smile awkwardly at Ancient One and said, "This? I also said just now, this is just my preliminary idea. As for what problems will it face if it is actually implemented? Now, how should we solve these problems? These difficulties must definitely be overcome by the two of us." That's nice to say. How about conquering together? You first brought these two children to me, and then used their abilities as bait to let me bring them into Kamar Taj. Now that you have the idea of throwing out the Speed Force, don't you just think that I have included them in Kamartaj and it is impossible to ignore them, and you want to throw all the problems to me to solve? The Ancient One is also a character who has lived for thousands of years. They say that the older is still the wiser. How could she not see what Loki had in mind? But as Ancient One analyzed, Loki's brilliance lies not in how to conceal his true thoughts, but in that even if you see through his thoughts, you still cannot escape his calculations. Because from the beginning, Loki's calculations revolved around two words, that is, human nature. Oh, Ancient One, you are telling the truth. How can you say that I, Loki, also studied abroad in Kamartaj? I am half a Kamartaj person, right? How could I deceive you? All of this is I really brought it up for the good of Kamarta. Also, although I haven't figured out how to implement the specific operation method, I still have some key ideas. Oh. Loki's previous quibbles with the Ancient One fell on deaf ears, and Loki just let it go. But when she heard Loki mention that there were already some key ideas for realizing the Speed Force, the Ancient One immediately became interested. What ideas do you have? Hurry up and tell me, and I will give you some advice. Maybe this idea will become a reality. Loki nodded, without any further pretense, and said to Ancient One, according to my idea, in order to achieve perfect compatibility and transformation between the Speed Force, infinite gems, and Pietro's ability magic, speed, it is best to be able to introduce another force as a lubricant and a catalyst. Ancient One frowned thoughtfully. After thinking for a short time, the expression on his face relaxed and he said with approval, you are right. Although there is already some confusion here, the introduction of a new force into the system is likely to make things more complicated. But as long as the power chosen to be introduced can act as a good medium and help the entire transformation system operate smoothly, it will actually make the generation of the Speed Force more stable. Since you can come up with this idea, you should already have a target for the power you want to introduce, right? Definitely. Loki replied affirmatively. When it comes to speed in nature, is there any element that is faster than light and lithium? The Ancient One immediately understood what Loki meant when he heard this. He looked at him with disgust and said, people who know you are really unlucky. You are just picking the people around you to do this. Hey, that's wrong. I didn't force or kidnap you morally. This is a deal between you and me. I just helped him solve a huge problem for him just before, so I'm asking him to come over. Wouldn't it be reasonable to help us? The person Loki mentioned was Thor, who asked Loki not long ago to help separate the TIE particles from Jane 3.6 Foster's body. As he said before, the energy medium intended to be used as a lubricant and catalyst in the Speed Force transformation system is the power of Thor in Thor's body, which has the potential to far exceed the power of Odin. If everything can be realized as smoothly as Loki envisioned, then the Speed Force created by him and Gu, together with Pietro, might really be able to compete with the original version of the DC universe next door. Whatever you say, that's your brother anyway, not my brother. Now that Pietro's training direction has been roughly determined, it's time to discuss what to do with Wanda. Gu, as he spoke, his eyes looked at Wanda involuntarily. Compared with Pietro's ability magic and speed, Wanda's ability magic that can alter reality, chaos, is the ability that Ancient One values the most. Chapter 180, Part 1. Loki actually has very conflicting feelings about Wanda's ability magic, chaos. On the one hand, Origin Magic Power's ability to alter reality is actually in opposition to the illusion and nothingness in Loki's own magic. But on the other hand, just as Loki deduced before, when nothingness and fantasy have reached their extremes and there is no gap between them and reality, can this also be called a reality? And when a reality is modified and covered by another new reality, does the reality that existed before the modification become an illusory existence? The so-called reality and illusion are, in the final analysis, two sides of the same coin. A concept that is both in opposition and can be converted into each other. So for Wanda's ability magic chaos, Loki not only hopes to gain some insights from it and enhance the illusory characteristics of his magic, but at the same time he is a little afraid of Wanda's ability and worries that one day he will be limited by the other party's ability. But at this moment, 07, a system that had not been online for a long time, popped up. Ding-o, it has been detected that the host is currently facing an important choice, and the main task is now being issued. Task 1001. The ultimate intention of deception. Now there is a little girl with extraordinary ability in front of you. As the god of lies, you seem to be afraid of the power she has. Please host overcome your own fear, guide this little girl on the road to true strength, and in the process, strengthen your own magic level, and understand the ultimate meaning of deception. After completing the task, the system will issue special rewards to the host. It's a system mission that I haven't seen for a long time, and it's also the main mission. I, the majestic king of Jotunheim, the powerful level godfather, actually fear Wanda's ability? Loki, who had his inner thoughts directly exposed by the system, felt unbelievable and could not control his inner anger. It's just that this anger is not directed at the system, but at himself. The arrogant Loki could not accept that he would show a cowardly side. What made him even more unacceptable was that all of this was clearly driven by him, but at the critical moment he backed down first. But fortunately, the sudden appearance of the system allowed Loki to see his own heart clearly, and it also allowed Loki to look directly into his own heart. Now that the system has put him in this position, Loki has to accept this main mission even if he doesn't accept it. Otherwise, Loki is likely to have his mental state damaged due to this incident, resulting in a decline in his strength. I just don't know what the system reward that hasn't appeared for a long time will be after the main mission is completed this time, and what is special about it. After accepting the system task, Loki did not dwell on what the task reward would be for too long, but instead focused on reality again. Regarding Wanda's teaching plan, I have actually imagined two completely different teaching plans. One of them can increase Wanda's strength to a very terrifying level in a short period of time, but this may very well affect Wanda's ability. It has a very serious negative impact on the character of the mind. Although the second plan will be slower in terms of growth rate, it is more reliable and can allow Wanda's strength and character to be steadily improved in a relatively gentle state. Hearing that Loki actually prepared two different teaching plans for Wanda, Ancient One didn't know why the sentence suddenly popped into his mind. Boys need to be poor and girls need to be rich. Although I know that there is a high probability that neither of us will choose the first teaching plan you mentioned, I am still very curious about what kind of method can Wanda gain huge amounts of strength growth in a short period of time. Loki smiled and said, I once mentioned to you how I treated my brother in order to make him a qualified heir to the throne of Asgard, right? The Ancient One recalled it for a moment and suddenly realized, you are planning to use illusions to let Wanda live a complete life in the environment you created. Loki nodded, confirming the Ancient One's guess. Indeed, as Ancient One guessed, Loki's first teaching plan was originally intended to let Wanda 430 live a virtual life through illusion. The illusion that Loki set for her was actually woven based on the plots of Loki's previous lives and movies. Loki only needs to add some details to it to make the entire illusion more realistic. Then when Wanda wakes up from the illusion, she will be able to directly awaken origin magic power and the power of alter reality. Because in the final analysis, magic is actually an idealistic power. Whether it is faith or obsession, when your mind has been completely devoted to magic, any miracle is possible. However, although this method is feasible, it also has an unavoidable flaw. That is, Loki cannot guarantee that after experiencing a false life in the fantasy world, Wanda returning to reality will be like the plot of the movie in Loki's previous life memory. Even if he becomes crazy, he will still completely ignore these false memories and successfully control the soaring power of origin magic power. Chapter 181, Part 1. This method definitely won't work. There are too many uncontrollable risks. We can't risk Wanda's future. Ancient One firmly denied. Loki also agreed with the Ancient One's statement. I definitely know that this method is unreliable, so why don't I just say that this method may have a negative impact on Wanda? What about the second teaching plan you mentioned? This second one won't be the same as the first one, with such serious side effects, right? Loki shook his head and said, that's definitely not the case. This second teaching plan is much simpler, but the growth rate is not as fast as the first teaching plan. Actually, it can't be said that this method is slow to work, but it depends on one's understanding, 21. Not long ago, by chance, I got a treasure called Tie Particles, which is actually the reality gem. I think if I give this thing to Wanda and let her understand its secrets, it will be very effective in improving her origin magic power level. If Wanda's understanding is good enough, then maybe within a few days, Wanda can improve her origin magic power to a very high level. Even if Wanda's understanding is average, she will definitely improve a lot over time due to her long-term exposure to Reality Gem and the influence of Reality Gem. The Ancient One looked very surprised when he heard Loki's description of the second teaching plan. I'm not surprised that this plan was originally planned, because there is nothing subtle about this plan. To put it bluntly, it relies on Wanda to achieve enlightenment on her own. It just provides her with tie particles in the process, which serves as an accelerator for enlightenment. What surprised the Ancient One was that Loki actually got the Reality Gem, one of the 6 infinite gems. In this way, only the Ancient One knew Loki already had 2 infinite gems in his hands, the Power Stone and the Reality Gem. As for what the Ancient One doesn't know, for the Ancient One who holds the Time Gem, if she really wants to find out an answer, then this matter really cannot be hidden from her. But as he grows older and his thoughts become more mature, the Ancient One also knows very well that the power of the Eye of Agamotto cannot be abused. After completing all this, Loki directly handed the 1,000-year building block with the core replaced to the Ancient One and said, you take care of the 2 brothers and sisters first. I will bring my brother Thor here, and then start the plan to build the Speed Force. Chapter 182, Part 1. Kamartaj, on the square in front of the Sorcerer Supreme holy place. At the moment, a ray of silver lightning was running crazily around the perimeter of the entire square at a speed that could not be caught by the naked eye. The silver light and shadow left by the lightning connected directly end to end on the square, forming a silver halo, like a huge amount of ring. And the initiator of this vision is none other than Pietro, who has obtained the Speed Force. Infinite gems were originally the existence that condensed all the miracles in the Marvel Universe. Coupled with the guidance of two powerful level godfathers, Loki and Ancient One, and the blessing of Thor's power, they created the Speed Force for Pietro. It can be said to be very smooth. It's just that unlike the original Speed Force in the DC Universe next door, when Pietro's copycat version of the Speed Force activates his ability, what appears on his body is not yellow lightning but silvery white flashes. As a result, Pietro naturally had no connection with the nickname Yellow Flash. Instead, he was given the nickname Yellow Flash by the magicians of Kamar-Taj because of the silver lightning that appeared on his body when running fast. Named Quicksilver. However, if there is only speed, it can only ensure that Pietro is invincible, but it will not allow him to win in the battle with the enemy. If you want to win, you must have some means of attack, and this is what Loki wants to teach Pietro. First of all, the simplest attack technique is definitely the brutal collision. As Admiral Porcelino said, speed is power. If Pietro is able to hit the enemy at a speed close to the speed of light, then because of its extremely high speed, it is known that kinetic energy is proportional to the square of mass and speed. The effect that Pietro's simple blow can cause will be comparable to that of a missile. White dwarfs fall quite a bit. However, the effects of force are reciprocal, that is to say, the amount of force Pietro exerts on the enemy, a Hodge, the reaction force he needs to bear is the same. If you want to protect yourself from being hurt by the reaction force, you need to consume the speed force to offset the reaction force. From this point of view, although this crude offensive move is highly efficient, it also consumes a lot of money. It is not actually a smart choice for combat. But in fact, there is a derivative version of this move, which uses the powerful airflow created by running at high speed to attack indirectly. But just 5 minutes later, Loki returned to the square of Kamar-Taj again, and then came to Pietro, stopped Pietro who was about to continue training and asked, "Boy, after such a long and boring practice, why? Do you want to try these moves to see how effective they can be in actual combat?" However, Loki has no idea how Wanda, who is in charge of the Ancient One, is currently studying. It can be said that Pietro, apart from not having the name Thor, has even more potential than Thor, the Reckless Man, in terms of the use of thunder and lightning. Hearing this, Pietro's eyes immediately released a light that was brighter than silver lightning, and then he nodded vigorously and said, "Definitely, Uncle Loki." In addition, Pietro can accelerate his thinking through the Speed Force, so Loki only needs to briefly explain the principles to Pietro for various skills and moves used by speedsters, and Pietro can quickly master them. Pietro can completely use the high-frequency vibration state of the molecules in his hand to turn his palm into a molecular vibrating knife that can cut everything. In the face of such a move, no matter how solid the armor is, it cannot block Pietro's attack. There is also a move called molecular vibration, which is one of the signature moves of the Flash in the DC Universe and must not be forgotten. The so-called molecular vibration is the use of the Speed Force to control the molecular vibration frequency of his body, allowing Pietro to temporarily phase his body to penetrate solid objects or avoid attacks. Chapter 183, Part 1. When Pietro appeared on this strange planet with Loki, the surrounding scene was completely a scene that would only appear at the end of the world. The sky was covered by countless dark red clouds, and the entire land underfoot was trembling violently, with new cracks appearing every moment. "Damn it! What the hell did you bring me to?" Pietro managed to steady himself and looked at Loki, who had brought him here with great annoyance. Compared to the slightly embarrassed Pietro, Loki seemed much more calm when faced with this shattering scene. Hearing Pietro's question, Loki smiled slightly and said calmly, Here are 10 pairs of turtle shells that an old guy spent the Emperor's time making for himself. Didn't you say you wanted to bring me for actual combat? I didn't see where the enemy was." Although he didn't quite understand what Loki meant by old guy and turtle shell, given the current situation, he didn't have time to learn more about it, so he could only quickly ask about their departure from Kamar-Taj this time. Goals to be accomplished. But after Pietro heard the answer given by Loki, he was stunned on the spot. "Enemy? Isn't the enemy right under your feet? This entire planet is your enemy, and it is also the target that I will take you out for actual combat this time." "Are you kidding me? Uncle Loki, April Fool's Day, it's not even here yet." When Pietro came to his senses, his first reaction was that Loki was joking with him. But Loki shook his head and said, "No, I meant what I said very seriously. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Do you want me to directly destroy a planet? How can I possibly do such a thing with my current strength?" Pietro immediately denied it after being confirmed by Loki. Loki put his hand on Pietro's shoulder and said to him earnestly, "Pietro, remember, a man must never say that he is incapable. And I only said that your enemy is this planet, but I didn't say that I would let you just destroy this planet." "Ah, what do you mean?" Pietro asked in confusion. "I told you just now, This planet is actually a turtle shell that an old guy built for himself, and his real life gate is the core protected under this turtle shell. In other words, you can win by using the ability of molecular vibration to pass through the protection of the outer strata and then directly destroy the core at the center. At this point, the identity of the old guy, in Loki's mouth, is also revealed. It is Loki's former enemy, the god Ego, who successfully escaped from his ice. However, this guy didn't stay stable for long after he narrowly escaped, and he came out to cause trouble again. Loki had just sensed the fluctuations in the magic mark he left on Anna's body, so he teleported over to check the situation. It's just that no matter what kind of response Pietro makes, there is a high probability that Star-Lord will not end well if Loki comes to him. The feeling of being carried away by the speed force is much more uncomfortable than motion sickness. Loki isn't too worried about Anna and Carol, but their Guardians of Galaxy are filled with people who are holding them back. Loki patted Pietro on the back. That's right. That's right. So you just need to use molecular vibration, get close to the enemy's core, and then shoot a silver lightning at the core. It's done. In order not to miss this good opportunity to eliminate his enemies, Loki hid in the dark. After confirming that Anna and others were okay for the time being, he returned to Kamartaj and brought Pietro over. Even with Pietro's reminder, Loki felt that with Star-Lord's mind and character, he would still want to stay and avenge his mother. Then I saw the Guardians of Galaxy composed of Anna and others, confronting Ego. Chapter 184, Part 1. After entering the state of high-frequency molecular vibration, Pietro plunged into the ground at his feet, as if he had jumped into a body of water. As he continued deeper into the Earth's crust, Pietro gradually discovered that everything around him seemed to be alive. It was constantly squeezing towards him and at the same time surging and rotating, making Pietro feel as if he had fallen into a whirlpool of the sea. Likewise, one can only avoid it by keeping the vibration of body molecules at a very high frequency. Finally, after a long period of darkness, Pietro penetrated the planet's crust and reached the core of the inner cavity. And in the center of this hollow is the target that Pietro will destroy on this trip, the core that maintains the existence of the entire planet, 537. But at the moment, in this hollow in the center of the Earth, in addition to the core emitting powerful energy fluctuations and the intruder Pietro, there is also a third party. Pietro, who had been warned by Loki in advance, naturally knew that the identity of this third party was the Guardians of Galaxy. The Guardians of Galaxy are driving a small spacecraft and are using the laser cutter on the spacecraft to try to destroy the solid shell on the surface of the planet's core. However, judging from the actual situation, their efforts do not seem to cause much damage to the core of the planet. Because during their attack, the surrounding Earth and rocks will also counterattack them under the control of the core. This results in the laser cutter not being able to work on the outer shell of the core for a long time. Once the laser cutter's cutting is interrupted, the core will quickly mobilize surrounding materials to repair the damage to the shell, making the hole that the Guardians of Galaxy finally made disappear in an instant. Thinking that Loki's daughter was also in the spaceship, Pietro did not dare to observe for too long and directly activated the speed force. In the blink of an eye, he came from the position just now to the interior of the spacecraft. It's just that Pietro didn't expect that as soon as he appeared in the spacecraft, he would have the muzzles of 4 guns pressed against his head, and at the same time, 2 daggers as sharp as iron were pressed against his neck. Pietro didn't have any panic about this. Pietro was confident that with his speed, if he wanted to hide, no one in the spaceship could hurt him. However, Pietro did not hide away, but raised his hands to show that he had no ill intentions, and then said, "Guys, calm down. I am not your enemy. Who are you? Why did you suddenly appear here? Why didn't I feel any spatial fluctuations?" It was Loki's daughter Anna who stood up and asked others to put down their weapons and ask questions. Although Pietro has never met Anna, he can guess from her appearance and hair color that she should be Loki's daughter. Pietro also saw the doubts in the eyes of Anna and the others, but he also knew that it was impossible to convince them with words alone. He could only use actual actions to prove that he was not just rhetoric. Okay then, let's. Not to mention the other members of the Guardians of Galaxy, Anna and Carol first showed suspicious eyes. That's just right. Since you run so fast, you can help us attract Ego outside. Well, that is the core. Ego is his name. You can help us attract his attention. In such a situation, here we have the opportunity to use the laser cutter on the spacecraft to penetrate directly into its core. However, before Anna could finish speaking, Star-Lord's voice interrupted what she was about to say. Therefore, in the eyes of Anna and Carol, Pietro said that he would directly destroy Egg's core with his own strength. Not only was he overestimating his own capabilities, but he was willing to die in the toilet. This? Pietro was a little stunned. Didn't he come to remind them to leave? How could he become their helper? Said Rocket Raccoon, who had been controlling the spacecraft in the cab to avoid Egg's attacks. You must be Uncle Loki's daughter Anna, right? My name is Pietro, and I am currently practicing with Uncle Loki in Kamartaj. The purpose of my coming here is to solve the core of the planet you were attacking just now. You can't blame them for looking at people under the door and looking down on Pietro, because in their perception, Pietro's energy level is at the level of level universe at best. It is far from the two-level sub-godfathers Anna and Carol, let alone Egg, who is a level godfather. No, I don't agree. I must kill this bastard Egg with my own hands and avenge my mother. Hearing Pietro mention Loki's name, everyone at Guardians of Galaxy finally felt relieved. Well, I came here to remind you to leave here quickly. I will destroy the core in a moment. When the energy in the core escapes, plus the planet, the collapse and disintegration will definitely affect a wide range. So for the sake of safety, you should leave as soon as possible. Don't worry, Uncle Loki asked me to handle this matter. You don't believe me, 3.0, but you should trust Uncle Loki's judgment, right? I have my own means to deal with Egg, so just listen to me and leave quickly, well? Otherwise, if you stay here, I won't be able to do anything. Now that Pietro has moved out the great god Loki, what else can Anna and the others say? Chapter 185, Part 1. What's going on with him? Pietro pointed at the suddenly insane Star-Lord and asked the others with a confused look. While gently stroking Star-Lord's back to comfort him, Gamora explained to Pietro, Ego, the core of the planet outside, is Quill's biological father. Oh? After hearing Gamora's explanation, Pietro became even more confused. Pietro really couldn't understand how such a dull-looking thing could mate and reproduce. If it weren't for the wrong color of his skin, his expression at this moment would be a replica of the classic Nick Young meme. Gamora continued to explain, Ego is a god. He can use his divine power to create bodies of different races for himself. Every time he goes to a planet, he will look for suitable women to mate with and pretend to be in love with them. But in fact, his purpose is just to wait for the child to be born, bring him back to his own planet, and then test whether the child has inherited his genes and has the same divine power as him. And his purpose for doing this is to use the divine power of future generations to realize his ambition to devour the entire universe. After listening to Gamora's explanation, Pietro finally understood why Star-Lord was so angry. So, he wants to take revenge on Egg because his mother was manipulated by this bastard Egg and abandoned her in the end? Regarding Pietro's question, Star-Lord, who had already calmed down under Gamora's comfort, stood up excitedly again and said to Pietro, playing with emotions, always giving up? If that's the case, then the most I can do is hate him. But he has obviously fallen in love with my mother. But for the so-called dream of swallowing the universe, he made my mother suffer from, damn it. He killed my mother. Pietro nodded. Okay, now I understand everything. Although I sympathize with you and can understand your desire to take revenge personally, you really don't have the ability to know. If you continue to stay here, not only will you not be able to take revenge, you will even hinder my actions to destroy the core of Ego. So, I'm sorry. After Pietro finished speaking, the members of the Guardians of Galaxy had no time to react. Even Carol only saw the afterimage of Pietro's activation. The next second, everyone felt that Pietro's figure seemed to flicker, and then they found that Star-Lord, who was standing next to them just now, had completely disappeared. Don't worry, everyone. I just sent him to the surface of this planet and did not harm him. After you go up and join him, take him out of here together. Next, I will attack Egg's core. After hearing Pietro's explanation, Anna and the others didn't ask any more questions. They saw Anna turn around, reach out towards the front of the spacecraft, and with a twist of her wrist, a magic portal appeared in front of their spaceship. Pietro mobilized the Speed Force again and disappeared into the spaceship in a flash. The next second, he saw the small spaceship sailing into the portal. As the portal closed, only Pietro was left in the hollow in the center of the Earth, in the core of Egu, who calls himself a god. Without the obstruction of the Guardians of Galaxy, Pietro will never show mercy to Egg again. The unique silver lightning burst out when the Speed Force was mobilized on his body, and Pietro once again entered a state of molecular vibration. In front of Pietro's molecular vibrations, the shell that Egg had worked so hard to build for himself seemed to be made of paper and was instantly ripped through by Pietro's arm. At the same time, a ray of silver lightning followed Pietro's arm with the force of a thunderbolt, hitting Egg's true core. However, just after Pietro's blow, the expected scene of the core exploding and the planet collapsing did not happen, which stunned Pietro in the center of the Earth. However, Loki on the surface of the planet couldn't help but laugh at this moment. I didn't expect you to be smart, Egg. Pietro only has the ability of the Speed Force, so he may not be able to clearly sense what happened just now. But Loki, who possesses the devil eye of direct death, clearly saw that at the moment Pietro was about to take action, Ego, who had no choice but to do anything, actually dispersed the originally independent core to the entire planet, forming a giant planet composed of countless A-core network composed of 317 nodes. In other words, Pietro's attack just now missed and did not hit Egg at all. Now it would be more troublesome to kill Ego. After the cores were dispersed, although the power of each core was weakened, it greatly improved the flexibility of EGE's energy transfer. This means that unless all nodes in the core network can be attacked at the same time, even if any one of the nodes is destroyed, Ego can quickly repair it through other nodes. It has to be said that Egg's 1,000 years have not been in vain. It seems that since he was frozen by Loki last time, he has done some good reflection. However, Ego would never have dreamed that even though he had dispersed a single core into a core network with many nodes, the two people who had most restrained him would appear on this planet today. Chapter 186, Part 1. To deal with Yigo, a core network with many nodes, and each node can be flexibly transferred, may be at a loss for ordinary people, but it is not a problem for today's Loki. The simplest and most direct way is to turn on the devil eye of direct death. As long as the node has crossed the death line, it will die, in the true sense. Even if other nodes are still intact, Igu can no longer restore them. In this way, as long as Loki is patient, it won't take long to kill all the nodes on the Yigo core network. In addition, Moko Batimo is also EGE's nemesis. Loki can first freeze time and space, and then destroy the nodes on EGE's core network one by one. Anyway, when time and space return to normal, all of this will be completed at the same time. However, whether it is Devil Eye of Direct Death or Moko Batimo, this only means that Loki has the ability to destroy Igo, but it does not mean that he has to do it himself. Because it's really too much trouble. Just leave this kind of physical work to Pietro, said Chow Chow. Chow Chow has arrived, and as soon as he thought of Pietro's name in his mind, Pietro appeared in front of Loki with sparks and lightning. Uncle Loki, I saw your daughter and her companions under the Earth's crust and persuaded them to leave. But after I attacked the core of the planet, why didn't I see any reaction? Well, you did a good job. The reason why the expected scene did not appear is because the enemy learned wisely and did not sit still and wait to be killed. Loki told Pietro about how Egg split the originally separate core into countless nodes and built a core network. Pietro was also very surprised when he learned the truth. If Loki hadn't brought him here today, he might have been deceived by Egg. Then what should I do next? Pietro looked at Loki for advice. What should we do? Can't we just continue to act according to the original plan? Loki also looked at Pietro and asked, but you didn't mean to defeat them one by one. Pietro stopped in the middle of his words, then slapped his forehead hard and said, I understand. Uncle Loki, what you mean is that as long as my speed is fast enough and exceeds Egg's reaction speed, then judging from the result, I will destroy all the nodes in the core network at the same time, because Egg there is no time to repair the node. Seeing that Pietro had come up with the answer through his own thinking, Loki couldn't help but nodded with satisfaction. Boys can be taught. Okay, don't stay here and act quickly. After finishing dealing with Egg, we should go back to Kamar. Taj has finished eating. In the midst of Tony's doubtful gaze and Steve's expectant gaze, Howard gave them the answer they wanted. Chapter 187, Part 1. Steve, there is news that you will be very excited after hearing. So make some mental preparations now, and be sure to stay calm. Although he didn't know what news Howard was going to say, Steve still suppressed the excitement in his heart just now, and then prepared himself for the shock brought by Howard. You should all know that Maria and I were assassinated, right? Howard did not reveal the news immediately, but first asked a question to everyone. Everyone nodded in affirmation. As the founder of Stark Industries, it was impossible for Howard not to report the attack on him and Maria on the news. Therefore, even ordinary people have heard about this big news that could be said to be earth-shattering at that time. At that time, we didn't know who was behind the attack on Maria and I, so after narrowly escaping under Thor's protection, we simply used the trick to create an explosion in the hospital and designed the illusion of being killed by the enemy is used to fake death to escape. Later, we changed our identities and lurked in S.H.I.E.L.D. We continued to conduct secret investigations. After collecting and combining a large amount of evidence, we finally discovered the true identity of the mastermind behind the scenes. It turned out to be Hydra, who was supposed to have been eliminated by 347 during World War II. It turns out that with the help of the original Paperclip project, they entered various government departments and intelligence organizations of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the United States, and then used the dead to parasitize the victors and continue to suck blood to strengthen themselves. The reason why Hydra took the risk of exposing our identities and attacked Maria and I was to gain access to the latest research results of the super soldier serum, friut, but all this is not the most shocking thing to me. The most difficult thing for me to accept is... When Howard said this, he glanced at the United States Captain Steve Rogers in front of him somewhat unbearably, and finally said slowly, the most difficult thing for me to accept is that one of the people who attacked us that day was someone I knew. His name was James Barnes. What? Upon hearing this name, the first and biggest reaction was Steve. Steve didn't care what other people's reactions were. He rushed to Howard in one stride, clasped his hands on Howard's shoulders, and asked seriously, Howard, are you sure? Bucky is still alive? If it weren't for the accessory Loki gave Howard, which gave him super fast self-healing ability, Steve might have rushed over and grabbed him, which would have been enough to send him to the hospital. However, being able to self-heal does not mean that you will not feel pain. Thinking about Steve's hand strength after being strengthened by the super soldier serum, one knows how terrible it must be. What's more, Steve's emotions are rising now, and his hand strength is very scary. The strength on it is even less important. Steve, please calm down first. Can you let me go first? Sorry, Howard. I just couldn't control myself after hearing the news about Bucky. It's okay. I can understand it. I was also shocked when I found out that the person who attacked me was Barnes. Later, I also doubted whether I had seen it wrong. Or maybe there were two people so similar in the world. Individual. So what's the result? Steve asked impatiently. The result is that, according to the results of my investigation, a hack, that person is Barnes. Because when he was captured by Hydra before, Hydra had conducted a test on the super soldier serum on Barnes, so he was never used during that mission. After falling into the valley on the train, he did not die on the spot, but was seriously injured and fell into a coma. After that, Barnes, who was seriously injured and unconscious, was discovered by a group of Soviet soldiers passing by and taken back. Because of Barnes's physical fitness that was different from ordinary people, he was sent to a secret organization and transformed into the Winter Soldier. Later, this secret organization began to cooperate with Hydra, which gradually recovered its vitality and was eventually completely annexed by Hydra with the disintegration of the Soviet Union. And Barnes, the Winter Soldier, was also completely transformed into a killing tool in the hands of Hydra. When Steve heard the news, he couldn't help but feel sad on the spot. He recalled that when he was still that little man, Bucky was always by his side. Ever since he was young, Bucky has always been so dazzling in Steve's eyes. He is not only a goal that people chase along the way, but also a person who warms people's hearts and gives them courage. It is precisely because of Bucky, a friend who has always been by his side, that Steve was able to persevere all the way and eventually became the superhero in people's eyes, the Captain of the United States. But today Steve learned that Bucky, who was supposed to be a hero, actually fell into the hands of ambitious people and became their tool of destruction and killing. Although Bucky did not do any of this voluntarily, you can imagine how painful it will be when Bucky wakes up one day and knows that his hands are stained with so much blood. And just imagining this kind of pain makes Steve's heart beat like a knife, making it unbearable. Don't worry, Steve. I asked Fury to call you all here today, not only to make arrangements for the elimination of Hydra, but also to rescue our hero and our friend Barnes. In the bridge, hearing Howard's speech, whether it was Hill, Phil Coulson, Barton, or Natasha Romanoff, even Tony, who had always been indifferent, nodded solemnly. It was obvious that everyone was very appreciative of Division's efforts on this matter. And Steve, who received the support of everyone, at the moment also cheered up again. Just like when he was still weak, he would never be knocked down by anyone. Steve today is even less likely to give in easily. Whether it's for Bucky or for justice and peace, Hydra must receive the punishment it deserves. Chapter 188, Part 1. If SHIELD wants to carry out any action, it must not be hidden from the World Security Council. Otherwise, if Nick Fury, the SHIELD director, could arrest people from various government departments and intelligence agencies in the United States with just one word, SHIELD would probably be targeted by countries all over the world the next day. Fortunately, after Howard's investigation, it was confirmed that several members of the World Security Council were not members of Hydra. Otherwise, even if SHIELD wants to take action against Hydra, the most they can do is use those Hydra members lurking within SHIELD, as well as those Hydra secret bases set up around the world. SHIELD cannot deal with Hydra members who have entered other government departments and are in high positions. In fact, even if there were no members of Hydra on the World Security Council, Fury spent a lot of energy to convince them to agree to this operation, and even had to make some benefits to put it bluntly. Although SHIELD's purpose of eliminating Hydra is good, in the short term it has had a very bad impact. The impression of the entire United States government in the minds of the people will inevitably suffer a certain degree of damage. This is absolutely unacceptable for a government whose most important goal is to pursue votes and support rates. So in order to facilitate this operation, SHIELD and Howard also lost a lot of money. Nick Fury promised that he would help these congressmen convert Thaddeus E. Ross, General Ross, who previously used the super soldier serum and turned his future son-in-law, Dr. Banner, into the Hulk. This guy seems to have become smarter after that lesson and has embraced the members of the World Security Council. Now that it's time for an exchange of interests, lawmakers are asking Nick Fury to use his connections to help Ross move up a level in the political house of cards in the United States. Not only that, Howard also needs to mobilize the resources of Stark Industries after the operation is over to help these congressmen boost the economy and employment in places where the parties behind them hold votes. There were other more exchange conditions that I won't mention. In short, with the determination of Howard and Fury, the operation to eradicate Hydra was finally approved by the World Security Council. However, even if the operation is approved, It is impossible for SHIELD to carry out arrest operations on a large scale. Otherwise, they will not be able to control the public opinion situation at all. So this time, the elite agents from Avengers and SHIELD need to appear. According to the original plan formulated by Howard and Fury, Hill, Phil Coulson, Barton, Natasha Romanoff, Steve, and Tony would each lead a team. The team members would be screened by Howard to ensure that 100% of them were not members of HYDRA. Agent composition. Each team must use the shortest possible time to secretly bring the personnel on the list to the secret prison that SHIELD has prepared according to the list of personnel assigned to them by Howard. After these high-level personnel placed by Hydra and government departments have been dealt with, that is the best time for them to launch a large-scale operation to wipe out Hydra bases around the world. However, after Fury told everyone about the entire plan, Tony stood up and opposed him. Regarding the plan formulated by Howard and Fury, Tony had no objection to the plan in terms of the overall framework. The main conflicts were still focused on some details. Tony could not trust the other agents in S.H.I.E.L.D., even if they had been tested by Howard. So Tony's plan was to replace those agents with the Iron Soldiers he designed, with Ultron commanding to complete the operation. After all, in Tony's understanding, people may still betray, but the machine will definitely strictly implement the orders given to it. But Tony's idea was opposed by everyone else on the bridge, especially Fury and Howard. From their point of view, if these agents that have been investigated cannot be trusted, then even if Hydra is eradicated, what is the point of SHIELD? 0. Please give me flowers. Will all the tasks that SHIELD receives in the future be handed over to the Steel Soldiers designed by Tony? But in this case, what is the significance of the existence of SHIELD? Not to mention that the World Security Council will never accept Tony's plan, because Tony's approach is equivalent to raising an army that belongs entirely to him in New York City. The final result is that it is absolutely impossible for Howard and Fury to compromise, and in front of Howard, the Sun, what kind of trouble can Tony, the Sun, make? If there are signs, Howard will have to suppress them. However, although Tony's proposal was rejected, Howard still cared about his son and left him a special privilege. That is the team that Tony is in charge of. They can all use the Steel Soldiers of his own design, but the number must be limited to 20. 0. Tony definitely accepted this result, otherwise Tony would not dare to say no in front of Howard. After the meeting, Steve met with Howard alone for a private conversation. His purpose was not only to learn more about Bucky, but also to ask Howard if he could help Paige get a magic weapon that gave the wearer self-healing ability. Regarding Paige, Howard did not refuse. Although this matter is more difficult, Howard will try anything shamelessly for the sake of his old friend Peggy. And it seems that he was negligent at the time and did not take Peggy's situation into consideration. If he couldn't get the magic weapon from Loki, Howard had already thought about it and would transfer his magic weapon to Peggy. Sorry, the number you dialed is not in the service area. But as soon as Howard picked up the phone, he heard the operator's voice prompt. Not in the service area? Did he really go to Mount Everest? Howard muttered, looking at the phone in his hand. Chapter 189, Part 1. As soon as Loki brought Pietro back to Kamar Taj, he saw a missed call pop up on his mobile phone. When he saw the name in the caller number, it was Howard Stark. As soon as he thought about it, he knew that the call must have been when he left the Earth just now, but he didn't know why Howard called him specifically. Do you want to ask about the twins' recent studies? Loki dialed back, and Howard on the other end quickly picked up. After listening to Howard's story on the phone, Loki finally knew what the other party was looking for. It turned out that Steve wanted to ask him for a piece of jewelry enchanted with rapid self-healing ability through Howard to extend the life of his old lover Peggy Carter. Loki didn't think much about this little thing and agreed directly on the phone. Even if Steve didn't ask Howard to come forward, Luo, 673, G would not refuse Steve's request because Steve and he had fought side by side. However, through this call with Howard, Loki heard some news that surprised him. That is that Tony has actually started to make his Iron Soldiers, and even Ultron has been made. I don't know how Ultron was able to create this when Tony didn't even have a mind gem. But curiosity is curiosity. After Pietro successfully knocked out Egg, Loki's main focus is now on the main mission previously released by the system. Just now, Loki finally thought of a good way to indirectly urge Wanda to improve her learning progress. Although among the twins, Pietro was born 12 minutes earlier than Wanda and is the elder brother of the two. But as the more mature one mentally, Wanda has always put herself in the position of her sister. This provides a good inspiration for Loki. Since both Pietro and Wanda are learning to master their own ability magic, if a healthy competitive relationship is formed between them, will they be able to achieve success? Can people achieve greater improvements in learning progress? Thinking of this, Loki quickly found the Ancient One and proposed to her that Pietro and Wanda have a magic competition every week. The Ancient One did not refuse Loki's proposal. On the one hand, such competition can indeed make Pietro and Wanda more focused in their daily practice. On the other hand, through actual combat testing, it is also easier for Loki and Ancient One to discover their shortcomings in the learning process and then propose targeted suggestions. But for the frequency that Loki proposed to hold magic competitions every week, I thought it was a bit too frequent. So after some discussion between the two, it was finally decided to have Pietro and Wanda compete every half-month. As for this first competition between the two, they have been practicing in Camartage for more than a month, and they have both initially mastered their own ability magic. Loki and the Ancient One decided to give Pietro and Wanda one day to prepare, and officially have their first magic competition tomorrow. Speaking of which, between Pietro and Wanda, who do you think will win tomorrow more? Loki looked at the Ancient One curiously and asked. The Ancient One did not give his answer immediately, but after thinking for a while, he answered, if we talk about the potential of the twin brothers and sisters' ability magic, then it is definitely Wanda. But based on the current strength of Pietro and Wanda, I think Pietro has a greater chance of winning. After his ability magic and speed has been transformed into the Speed Force, he can continue to accumulate power by just running without any loss. So in the starting stage, Pietro is undoubtedly ahead of Wanda. However, it cannot be ruled out that after Wanda learned that she will compete with Pietro tomorrow, she suddenly had an epiphany tonight. If this really happens, the result is hard to say. But as far as the current situation is concerned, I am still more optimistic that Pietro can win tomorrow. Hearing the answer given by the Ancient One, Loki couldn't help but be a little surprised, but the smile on his face could not be concealed. If she loses to that naive guy Pietro in front of the Ancient One and Loki, Wanda will definitely be reluctant to do so. Chapter 190, Part 1. The next morning, on the square in front of the Camartage Sorcerer's Supreme Holy Place, Loki, Pietro, Ancient One and Wanda, the four of them were standing in the center of the square at the moment. And around them, there were many magicians who came to watch this magic competition. These magicians gathered here specifically today not only to watch a wonderful battle, they also wanted to see what was so unusual about Pietro and Wanda that could attract Loki and Ancient. Two great magicians led them to practice in person. Pietro saw so many people coming around the square, which made him feel even more excited. If Wanda can be defeated in front of so many people today, this will be the most glorious moment in Pietro's life of more than 10 years. In order to win today's magic competition, Pietro also made a lot of preparations. This can be seen from his different outfit from the past. Pietro was wearing a black one-piece battle suit today, with silver lightning patterns emblazoned on the chest and arms. The suit was designed by Pietro himself, using all his previous knowledge of aerodynamics at MIT. The material of the clothes is a special kind of fabric, which not only has an extremely low wind resistance coefficient, but also has extremely high ductility and breathability. However, the most special thing about this battle suit is the pair of boots on Pietro's feet. It was a magic weapon, Walter's Speedy Boots, which could generate a magic circle under the feet by injecting magic power during the running process, thereby achieving flexible movement in the air. Definitely, Pietro wore 07 not for the special ability enchanted on Walter's Speed Boots, but because as a magic weapon, Walter's Speed Boots are more durable than those big brand sports shoes and can withstand his high speed. The wear and tear caused by running. But compared to Pietro's serious preparation, Wanda's side seemed a bit unremarkable. Wanda was still wearing her usual red dress with a red leather jacket, and she didn't have any magic weapons on her body. People who didn't know might think that Wanda didn't take this competition seriously at all. But what no one knows is that the reason why Wanda appears so relaxed is because just last night, she made a new breakthrough in origin magic power. Although she didn't know that this breakthrough would give her enough strength to defeat Pietro, it also greatly increased Wanda's confidence. Okay, now that everyone is here, let me announce to you the rules for today's magic competition. Just as Loki came between the two and began to introduce the rules, the Ancient One on the side waved his hand and brought everyone in the square into the scene space. And at the same time, a square ring rose from the center of the square, just lifting the four of them up. This is the arena where you will compete today. If you fall out of the arena or admit defeat, or if you are unable to get up within 10 seconds after being knocked down, it will be considered a failure. In addition, you are not allowed to use weapons, use external forces, attack each other's eyes or vital points, or kill each other during today's competition. Otherwise, you will be judged as a failure. Definitely, I believe that you two brothers will not do anything like killing each other. The rules have been made clear to you. If you are both ready, I will announce the start of the competition. After Loki finished speaking, he turned to Pietro and Wanda. Seeing that they both nodded in agreement, he directly announced, "Then I declare that the first magic competition will now officially begin." As soon as the words fell, Ancient One and Loki exited the ring at the same time. Above the ring, a red mist rose from Wanda's palm, covering her whole body. As for Pietro on the other side, his figure is no longer visible on the ring. If it weren't for the flash of silver lightning from time to time that proved that he still existed, I would have thought that this was Wanda performing a one-man show. However, this dull situation did not last long. In the next second, everyone saw a phantom rushing towards where Wangmi was standing with lightning speed. However, the scene where everyone expected Wanda to be knocked away did not happen, because the dark red mist that enveloped Wanda was like a ball of soft cotton. When Pietro collided with an unrivaled force, all the energy generated by the collision was resolved by this dark red mist. And after blocking Pietro's first wave of attacks, Wanda also controlled the chaos force in her hand to control Pietro. But the opponent's speed was too fast, and he immediately retreated as soon as the attack failed, causing Wanda's move to miss. As for Pietro, after seeing Wanda using chaos force to create an air superiority circle for himself, he immediately knew that his original plan of a quick victory would not work. Fortunately, this was not the first time for Pietro to face such an opponent wearing a tortoise shell. He was also somewhat fortunate that Loki had taken him to an actual battle before, and he had faced an opponent like Egg in actual combat. Otherwise, if he were suddenly faced with a defensive move like Wanda's that had no blind spots today, he might not be able to think of a way to deal with it. The next moment, Pietro took out the move he had used against Egg before. The molecules in his body vibrated at high speed in an attempt to penetrate the defensive air control circle created by Wanda. However, things did not develop in the direction Pietro imagined. Only when he rushed to the air control circle in front of Wanda did he realize that under the state of molecular vibration, he was unable to pass through the defenses built by Wanda with chaos force. This time, Pietro suffered a big loss and was almost caught by Wanda's chaos force. Fortunately, he reacted quickly enough, and the silver lightning on his body instantly exploded, and Wanda's big hand made of chaos force bounced away. Although Pietro was a little depressed, who made him make a mistake? Although the molecular vibration mode under the Speed Force state allows Pietro to travel through various substances, the chaos force is different. Unlike Egg's hard shell made of a large number of material molecules, Wanda's air control circle constructed using chaos force is actually an energy field. No matter how strong the shell made of molecules is, there will always be gaps due to the interaction between molecules. This is also the reason why molecular vibrations can penetrate any material. The principle of this move is that it cannot be captured by the naked eye. Gap. But in the air control circle energy field constructed by chaos force, field is a physical concept with space as the independent variable. It does not have such a so-called gap. It is no wonder that Pietro's tried and tested molecular vibration failed. Pietro's 2 waves of offensives were ineffective, which meant that his plan to win this sparring match completely went bankrupt. Although Wanda successfully blocked Pietro's attacks continuously due to her speed disadvantage, she was always in a passive defensive state and was unable to make an effective counterattack. This means that if they want to decide the winner next, Pietro and Wanda will have to compete head-on. Both Wanda and Pietro know this very well, but when the final battle begins depends on when Pietro launches his final offensive. In order to win the final victory, Pietro, who had the advantage of first move, did not intend to start a decisive battle immediately. He began to run around the edge of the square arena at high speed, continuously increasing the accumulation of divine speed. At the same time, as the speed force increased, Pietro's speed limit also continued to increase, and soon it was close to half the speed of light. Wanda knew very well that if Pietro continued running like this, she would be the loser in the end. In desperation, Wanda can only continue to expand her air control circle by diluting chaos force, hoping that in this way, she will continue to squeeze and limit Pietro's space for movement. However, the choice Wanda made actually played into Pietro's hands. Although the expansion of the air control circle can limit Pietro, at the same time Wanda's own defense will inevitably become weaker. Pietro seized this perfect opportunity and used the trick that he had hidden since the beginning of the fight. Chapter 190, Part 2. A bolt of silver lightning emitted from Pietro's fingertips, and then instantly penetrated the 553 defensive air control circle formed by the chaos force that had been diluted several times, and headed straight for Wanda. At this moment, no one could see that Pietro, who was in a state of high-speed movement, had a winner's smile on his face. But will things really go as smoothly as Pietro thought? At the same time as Pietro's fingertips fired lightning, a look of shock appeared on Wanda's face, but this shock was quickly replaced by surprise. Just as the silver lightning was about to hit Wanda's body, the chaos force that had originally spread around her completely shrunk in an instant, and then tightened around her like a heat-shrinkable tube when exposed to heat. On top of this silver lightning sent by Pietro, the silver lightning entangled by the chaos force was like a poisonous snake that was pinched 7 inches, and it immediately lost the strength to struggle. Even more unexpectedly, the lightning fell into Wanda's hands like a strong rope. Under the drag of chaos force, it was constantly pulling Pietro closer to Wanda. Pietro, on the other hand, tried desperately to cut off the lightning released by his fingertips, but found that it was not under his control at all. The lightning even started to wrap around his arm, shocking Pietro to the point where cold sweat broke out on his forehead. No, if I continue like this, I will definitely lose. Although I am not very skilled yet, it seems that I can only use that one move. After making up his mind, Pietro also stopped running. Anyway, in this situation, he couldn't escape even if he wanted to. Then the next second, amid the incredible gazes of Wanda, Loki, Ancient One, and all the magicians, a shadow suddenly appeared next to Pietro. And this phantom continued to solidify, and finally turned into an entity that looked exactly the same as Pietro. The moment Pietro's duplication took shape, he immediately activated the Speed Force and came behind Wanda, put his palm on Wanda's shoulder and said, "It seems that I won this competition in the end, my dear sister." Chapter 191, Part 1. Howard and Fury patiently investigated for 20 years, and the Hydra eradication plan carefully planned went smoothly at first. Fury first arranged for Natasha Romanoff and Barton to secretly kidnap Alexander Pierce, a veteran of S.H.I.E.L.D., and then obtained a large amount of criminal evidence from him about Hydra's evil deeds over the years. With this evidence, S.H.I.E.L.D. has a basis for its next actions, and Steve and his team also begin to complete their mission. Up to this stage, everything was proceeding according to Howard and Fury's plan. The HYDRA undercover agents in various government departments and intelligence agencies of the United States were quickly eliminated in the face of SHIELD's vigorous methods and ironclad evidence. After the work of and is over, it is time to coordinate all the forces and start to deal with the Hydra bases secretly established around the world. On this task, the team led by Tony completed the task most efficiently. The Iron Soldier comes with a precise aiming fire system and has no fear of injury or death. So even when facing those Hydra soldiers who have been completely brainwashed, Tony's Steel Soldiers already have huge amounts of advantages. But success is also a Steel Soldier, and failure is also a Steel Soldier. Tony's high level of trust in the Iron Army prevented him from discovering that the Hydra bases he asked Ultron to lead the Iron Army to destroy were not directly destroyed by Ultron in the end. They just slaughtered all the Hydra personnel, then directly occupied the entire base and the hardware facilities in the base, and then began to frantically produce new Steel Soldiers. Even though these Steel Soldiers were produced without Tony's permission, they used ordinary versions of the arc reactor that had not been enchanted by Hellfire. But as long as the quantity is large enough, even if it is used as cannon fodder, it can create considerable value. What's more, when the quantitative change reaches a certain level, it will trigger a qualitative change. But the new Iron Soldiers are next, and more importantly, Ultron has obtained a large amount of Hydra's research results over the years by constantly secretly occupying these Hydra bases. There is no doubt that these achievements will eventually become the materials that Ultron uses to strengthen its own strength. In addition, with the help of the internal intelligence network established by Hydra over the years, Ultron obtained a very valuable piece of information. The content of this information is about a black marketeer named Crow. According to one of the records in Hydra's internal documents, Crow may have a large amount of vibranium ore in his hands. After Ultron received this information, he immediately began to search for information about Crow on the internet. Then I discovered that this guy had provoked quite a lot of people and forces. The black spots were filled with bounties for kidnapping and assassinating him. As for vibranium, Ultron is even more familiar with it. There are many parts on it that are processed using vibranium. Ultron is very clear about the performance of this metal. If this information from Hydra is true, then what is in front of Ultron now is probably a good opportunity to obtain a large amount of vibranium ore. Once Ultron obtains sufficient vibranium resources, it can recreate a more powerful body for itself. By that time, relying on the powerful strength gained from the performance of vibranium, Ultron felt that there was no one on this earth that could scare it. Even the so-called Thor and Loki, the god of trickery. What's more, if Ultron can get the batch of vibranium ore in Crow's hands, the day when its world will be nuclear neutralized is not far away. Thinking of this, even Ultron, as a digital being, almost lost his cool. He wanted to rush in front of Crow and force him to hand over the vibranium ore. But in the end, Ultron forced himself to calm down, knowing that it was not the time to expose himself yet. In order to take action against Crow, it must first find a suitable reason for itself. Therefore, before officially starting to take action, Ultron needs to create some movement and create a favorable premise for his actions. Unfortunately, Phil Coulson and his action team became the unlucky ones chosen by Ultron. As an insider of this snake-killing operation, it was very easy for Ultron to obtain the mission schedules of other action teams. There is no other special reason why Phil Coulson was selected. It was purely because he felt that Phil Coulson was the weakest among all the teams. Now that Ultron has decided to take action, he must pick the soft one. After mastering the action plan of Phil Coulson's team, the next thing is simple. Ultron first invaded the Hydra base that Phil Coulson's team originally planned to attack through the network, and notified the Hydra people in advance that they were being targeted by S.H.I.E.L.D. Then, after the failure of Phil Coulson's team, he assisted the Hydra members in the base along the way to evacuate. The ultimate goal of the evacuation is definitely where Crow is hiding. As long as Ultron successfully guides Hydra's people to Crow's location, Ultron will have reason to contact Crow and get the vibranium ore it needs. It is also because of the news made by Ultron that the fate of 2 people among all living beings in New York City will undergo earth-shaking changes. Ask for fresh flowers, please collect, please monthly votes. If you like it, please leave a comment and share it. Chapter 192, Part 1. Today's New York City can be said to be the most chaotic day since the last alien invasion. Phil Coulson also didn't expect that a task that he thought was easy to get would end up causing such a big mess. Phil Coulson has also completed the task of destroying Hydra's secret base several times, and he has never gone wrong. But for some reason in today's mission, Hydra's people seemed to know that they would appear in advance and did not give them time to seal off the scene. As soon as they got within the opponent's fire coverage, Hydra's bullets and shells were fired at them. If it weren't for the black technology developed by S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy to save their lives, Phil Coulson's team would have been wiped out as soon as they met. Although his life was saved, Phil Coulson's courage was almost shattered. It's not that he escaped death. For agents like Phil Coulson who have been performing field missions for a long time, life and death have long been ignored. What Phil Coulson is afraid of is that not only did he fail to complete his mission today, but he also made such a big noise in New York City. After returning home, he will definitely not be able to escape Nick Fury's death eye gaze. Because the battle started so suddenly, Coulson's side had not had time to make any preparations, which also resulted in Phil Coulson's team being in a passive state during this battle. As a result, the fighting situation became increasingly difficult to control, and the scope of the impact continued to expand. Not to mention that some Hydra personnel have already begun to evacuate, and thrilling car chase scenes can be seen almost on several major roads in New York City. However, watching such a scene in a movie is definitely thrilling, but if it actually happened in real life, it would be thrilling. Especially those ordinary residents of New York City who have finally returned to normal life with the help of disaster control companies. When they learned from TV or radio news reports that something like this happened again, it can be said that their hearts were extremely broken. Stephen Strange should be the most knowledgeable about this. I think back when the Chitauri army and the Accuser fleet invaded Earth, although he was lucky enough to escape because he was flying darts in Europe. But when he returned to New York, he discovered that the mansion and luxury cars he had worked hard for many years and bought with loans had all been turned into worthless trash by Chitauri's bombardment. Even the hospital where he usually worked and the university where he taught were reduced to rubble in this disaster. Fortunately, Tony Stark's disaster control company is quite conscientious and has given priority to the restoration of public facilities such as hospitals and schools, so that Strange can at least make a living by relying on his medical skills. But as the saying goes, blessings never come in pairs, and misfortunes never come alone. Strange's good days haven't lasted long, and he encountered such bad luck again today. Strange was driving his new sports car honestly on the road. When he turned around, he saw an armored vehicle at full power crashing towards him. "The new car I just picked up, WC&M." As soon as he finished speaking, Strange was knocked over along with his car. He didn't even have time to get angry and collapse, and his whole eyes turned black and fell into a coma. As for the outcome of this incident, in order to minimize the impact of the incident, S.H.I.E.L.D. definitely had to intervene. According to news reports, people only know that during the day, Mr. Strange, an enthusiastic citizen, risked his life and used his new sports car to help the New York police stop a heinous criminal. Fortunately, Strange, who was lying in the ICU ward of the hospital that night, was still in a coma. Otherwise, if he heard such news reports, he would probably be so angry that he fainted again. Unfortunately, Strange's hands were severely injured in the car accident. When he was taken to the hospital, almost no bones in his hands were intact. Not only that, if it is just a bone problem, then it is not impossible to fully recover under the treatment of a skilled orthopedic surgeon. The most troublesome thing is that the nerves in Strange's hands also suffered extremely serious damage, and there is no way to completely cure this injury based on current medical standards. In other words, even if Strange recovers from his injury, he will never be able to be the chief surgeon of neurosurgery as before, and he will not even be able to hold the scalpel steadily. For Strange, who has always been proud of his steady hands and superb surgical skills, this is definitely a bolt from the blue. But today, too, for a young man in another corner of New York City, today is the luckiest day in his life. Peter Parker, an ordinary high school student in Midtown High School in New York. It was ordinary in the real sense, not ordinary like Yanghua. Today is definitely an important day for Peter, a young man. Because today he is going to visit the Spider Museum with his own goddess Liz Toombs. Definitely, he and Liz were not the only ones who went together. Members of their entire question-answering interest group participated in today's visit. But for an introverted boy like Peter, who has a dog-licking personality, it is already a great thing to have the opportunity to get along with the goddess. As for two people being alone or something, Peter could only fantasize in his dreams. If he and Liz were left alone together, Peter would probably be so nervous that he couldn't even speak. However, this originally happy and good day was indeed ruined by a sudden accident. Not long after Peter and his party entered the Spider Museum, a group of Hydra personnel with loaded guns rushed in from outside. Peter and a group of high school students had seen this kind of scene before, and they were stunned. "My legs were so weak that I couldn't move." However, SHIELD moved very quickly. Before the Hydra men could even capture the hostages and find cover, they were taken away by precise bullets. But what no one noticed was that during the process, a stray bullet broke an incubator in the museum, causing a special irradiated spider to escape from the box. The freed radioactive spider didn't immediately escape from the spider museum. It didn't even hide. This spider seemed to be on a mission, constantly overcoming various difficulties and obstacles just to get closer to a frightened ordinary boy in the museum. And as the spider bit the back of the boy's hand, at this moment, a new Spider-Man parallel universe was born. Chapter 193, Part 1. I announced that the 11th magic competition will now officially begin. Camartage, in the square in front of the Sorcerer Supreme holy place. 5 months have passed since Pietro and Wanda had their first magic sparring session. During this period, the twins conducted a total of 10 magic competitions, but the results of the competition were shocking. Except for Pietro, who won the first match, Pietro lost to Wanda in all the subsequent 9 matches. Facts have proved that the idea that Loki came up with worked really well, and Wanda's level and understanding of origin magic power have improved rapidly. After the failure of the first sparring session, Wanda seemed to have completely enlightened, and there was no longer any obstacle to her feelings for Reality Gem. On the other hand, Pietro, the victory in the first sparring match suddenly made him swelled, and his usually very active practice of moves began to become careless. Even the accumulation of the Speed Force became no longer a concern. The result was that in the second competition, Pietro suffered a disastrous defeat, and he was unable to fight back. By the time Pietro came to his senses and wanted to catch up again, Wanda had already taken off. Even if Pietro increased the intensity of his daily practice to double or even triple the original level, the result would be that he would lose less ugly during the competition, but he would still be suppressed by Wanda's origin magic power. After all, facing an opponent who can alter reality and eliminate the concept of friction directly in the ring, no matter how fast Pietro is, he still can't show it. However, after 9 defeats, Pietro finally drove away. He finally understood that he could no longer defeat Wanda simply by running and accumulating the Speed Force. If you want to win, you must find a way to deal with the fact that during the competition, the reality of the rules in the entire arena may change at any time according to Wanda's thoughts. But it is not easy to solve this problem. As the saying goes, know yourself and the enemy, and you will never be defeated in 100 battles. Unable to judge Wanda's next move, even if Pietro wanted to respond, he could only rely on his on-the-spot reaction. Definitely the best way is to defeat Wanda before she takes the initiative to change her tactics, but Pietro also knows that he cannot do this. This can be seen from the air dominant circle created by Wanda using Chaos Force during the first competition. Fortunately, Pietro, who possesses the Speed Force, definitely has abnormal reaction speed. Then Pietro only needs to make up for his lack of knowledge. When facing Wanda, the winning rate will be greatly improved. Although Pietro is blessed by the Speed Force, both his thinking speed and reaction speed can be said to be comparable to a quantum computer. But if there is not enough knowledge reserved to support it, then no matter how fast your brain works, it will be in vain if you can't think of a way to deal with it. After this period of crazy supplementation of all kinds of knowledge, Pietro finally understood what knowledge is power. Regarding Wanda's dilemma of using origin magic power to completely eliminate the friction in the ring, Pietro finally found a perfect solution. And in today's 11th magic competition, Pietro plans to surprise Wanda. As Loki's voice announcing the start of the fight fell, Pietro did not enter the ultra-high-speed movement state and disappear from the ring as usual, but uncharacteristically just stood there quietly. His performance, let alone Wanda, who was also in the ring as an opponent, even Loki and Ancient One on the sidelines were full of doubts, and they had no idea what kind of medicine Pietro was selling in his gourd. Seeing the confused looks on everyone's faces, Pietro smiled proudly. Whether the new trick he came up with is effective or not is another matter, but at least the unexpected effect was achieved. Hey Wanda, don't try to take victory away from me easily today. Let me show you the new tricks I've been trying to develop for a while. After Pietro finished speaking, a large amount of silver lightning began to pour out of his body. These silver lightnings did not spread out like the usual silver snakes, but began to flow rapidly under Pietro's control close to his skin. Zero, please give me flowers. Then, amid everyone's astonished gazes, Pietro's body began to slowly rise until his feet finally completely left the ground. Pietro actually flew up. How about it? Wanda, I didn't expect that I could fly. You can change the rules of reality and eliminate the friction in the ring. It really bothered me for a long time. I have been reading books on different subjects these days, just hoping to find a way to deal with this matter. Finally, Huang Tian paid off, and I found a solution to this problem. As long as I can fly, whether there is friction or not is no longer a problem for me. 0, even without friction, I can go faster. So in order to obtain flight's ability, I tried to use the lightning ability derived from the Speed Force to generate a magnetic field in the form of lightning, and then use the controlling magnetic field method. It gave me the ability to fly. Today, I will reverse my previous defeat and win the magic competition again. After saying that, Pietro accelerated and rushed towards Wanda. And during this process, there were constant duplications coming out of Pietro. This resulted in a scene on the ring, just like the scene when Naruto used multiple shadow duplication to rush towards the enemy. The same is true for countless Pietro duplications at the moment, but compared to Naruto, who can only roll balls with one trick, Pietro has more tricks. And after Pietro developed the electromagnetic series of silver lightning moves, he had even more attack methods. Countless tricks came at Wanda at the same time, and it seemed that Wanda would be submerged in the huge energy in the next second, and then lose the battle. But will reality really go as smoothly as Pietro imagined? Chapter 194, Part 1. Facts have proved that sometimes things are really not that complicated, and Wanda did lose to Pietro so cleanly. After experiencing 9 consecutive defeats, Pietro finally avenged his shame and successfully turned the score of these 11 magic competitions into 9-2. However, this does not mean that Pietro's paper strength really surpasses Wanda. He was able to win this time not only by relying on the unexpected ability to obtain flight ability by manipulating magnetism, but also because of Wanda's carelessness. No matter how powerful Wanda is, one thing that cannot be changed is that she is still a young adult girl. Faced with 9 consecutive crushing victories over Pietro, Wanda will definitely feel pride, complacency, contempt, and other emotions. Just like Pietro, who won the first match. The original intention of Loki and Ancient want to hold this magical 3-3-3 discussion was not to make Pietro and Wanda competitive, but to encourage them to work hard and improve in this way, and at the same time, they could discover their own strengths. Shortcomings. Make up for your shortcomings. Although Wanda lost to Pietro today, she can learn humility and caution from it. So this magic competition will not be in vain. It's better for Pietro and Wanda to experience failure early in Kamartage and realize these truths than to regret it later when they face their real enemy. After the discussion ended, everyone retreated from the mirror space. However, just after returning to the real world, Mordu came to the Ancient One with a man with an unshaven beard and a haggard look. When Ancient One saw this man's face, his eyes lit up instantly. However, she concealed it very well. Neither Mordo nor the other magicians present noticed anything strange about Ancient One, the Sorcerer Supreme. Only Loki, who was very observant, discovered the change in Ancient One's expression, and he also knew very well why Ancient One could not help but have such a change. Because the man Mordo brought here was the next heir to the Sorcerer Supreme, Stephen Strange, whom the Ancient One had been waiting for thousands of years, and for whom she had high hopes. I saw Stephen Strange walking up to Loki with an excited face, then bowed slightly and said, "Thank you very much for being willing to meet me, Ancient One Magician." Seeing Strange salute to him and call himself the Ancient One Magician, Loki couldn't help but laugh. While smiling, he turned his head and winked at the Ancient One, obviously mocking the Ancient One for not having the aura of a master like him. But Strange didn't know what was going on. When he saw the man in front of him laughing after he saluted, Strange was stunned. Loki shook his head at him and said, "My name is Loki, and the bald man next to me is the Ancient One." "Hello, Mr. Strange." Ancient One looked at Strange and greeted him. "Doctor, I'm a doctor. Dr. Strange." Strange corrected him obsessively. A strange smile appeared on Ancient One's face. "I think you are no longer a doctor. Otherwise, why would you find yourself here? You have had many surgeries performed on yourself recently, 7 times if I remember correctly, right?" Listening to Ancient One's words, Strange was extremely confused. Why on earth did the other party know so much information about him? "Yes, you're right. But why do you know so many things? Did Pangborn tell you?" Facing Strange's question, Ancient One did not respond. Instead, she motioned for Strange to follow her, and the two of them walked towards the Sorcerer Supreme holy place together. "Pietro, Wanda, do you want to come up with me and see the excitement?" Loki asked the twins. "No, Uncle Loki, I don't want to go back and continue reading." Pietro refused. This time Pietro wisely learned the lesson from last time, and did not get carried away again because of the temporary victory and became arrogant. As for Wanda, she didn't reply and just shook her head in rejection. It was obvious that this defeat made her a little depressed. Moreover, Wanda is not the kind of person who likes to join in the fun, so it was expected that she would refuse Loki's invitation. Loki didn't take the twins' rejection seriously. After waving his hands for the two of them to leave, he quickly followed the pace of Ancient One and Strange and arrived at the Sorcerer Supreme holy place. "You once cured a man named Pangborn, a paralytic, didn't you?" As soon as Loki entered the hall, he heard Strange's question to the Ancient One. As a staunch materialist and a famous neurosurgeon with rich scientific research experience, Strange does not believe that there is a so-called soul in this world. "But I know how to better heal the body with the help of the soul. Are you trying to tell me that you gave him psychological treatment?" Strange tried to use his own knowledge to understand the meaning of the Ancient One's words. Hearing this, Strange's eyes shone brightly. This was the first time such a change had appeared in his eyes since he came to Kamartaj. He took a sip of tea and then asked, "But how did you heal the two completely damaged vertebrae C7, C8? Ancient One nodded and said, "Yes, but what if I told you that the body can convince itself to perform various forms of recovery without any external force?" "So be it." Ancient One poured a cup of tea from the table and handed it to Strange. The Ancient One shrugged and denied, "I didn't cure him. He couldn't walk anymore, and I just convinced him." "Are you talking about cell regeneration? This is a very cutting-edge medical technology. That's why you have to hide here to conduct research, because there is no supervision from medical institutions, right?" "Thank you." Strange thanked him as he took the teacup. Therefore, it is not difficult to understand why he behaved like this at the moment. But looking at the conversation between the two people in the holy place, Loki finally couldn't hold it back and laughed again. "I'm sorry, I'm a professional, and usually I will laugh. Unless 2.7 can't hold it in anymore. Ha ha ha. The soul heals the body?" When he heard the Ancient One mention the word soul, Strange even wondered if he had heard it wrong. "Then let me put it another way. When you perform nerve connection surgery, are you treating it, or does the body heal itself?" Ancient One asked. The Ancient One glared at Loki, who was still laughing, and then said to Strange, "No, Mr. Strange, I am not researching any cutting-edge medical technology here." Chapter 195, Part 1. After experiencing a personal experience of astral projection and seeing the existence of the soul in the mysterious world, Ancient One finally convinced Strange, a rebellious follower of Scientology, by manifesting himself in front of people, and convinced him to accept it as a disciple. "Good morning, Mr. Loki." Early the next morning, Strange showed up at the Sorcerer Supreme holy place on time with a brand new mental outlook after tidying up his appearance and repairing himself overnight. However, the person who wanted to teach him today was not the Ancient One, the Sorcerer Supreme who accepted him as a disciple, but Loki, the person he mistakenly thought was the Ancient One yesterday. This has to mention the deal Loki made with the Ancient One for his two daughters. He promised the Ancient One's conditions, and now he naturally has to fulfill his promise. What's more, even without the constraints of the promise, Loki would not agree to let the Ancient One personally teach Strange magic. After all, Wanda is now personally trained by the Ancient One. If 07 adds a Strange, wouldn't some of the time and energy that the Ancient One can use on Wanda have to be allocated? Wanda's learning progress is related to the completion progress of Loki's main mission. Since the Ancient One is willing to use the promise he once made, Loki will definitely follow the trend. It not only exchanged favors, but also ensured that the progress of the task would not be slowed down. "Good morning, Strange. Before we officially start learning the secrets of Kamartaj, I need to introduce to you what exactly we are learning. This language of mystical magic has existed since the dawn of civilization. Long ago, the sages called this language incantations. If this name makes you feel unrealistic, then you can also understand it as a program that builds the source code of the real world. We draw energy from other spaces in the multi-universe, and then use spells to build this energy into a magic circle, and finally let it have the effect we want." As Loki said this, he also constructed the Ring of Gargarator, which is the defensive magic most commonly used by arcane magicians. Looking at this shocking scene that once again appeared before his eyes, Strange was naturally extremely excited. After all, this is a supernatural power that has been hidden in history. But after being excited, Strange quickly became worried. "But can I do such a thing with the current state of my fingers? My hands can only swing in the air. What should I do? How can I become a master like you?" "Humph." Loki snorted in displeasure. "Then how do you think Pangborn, a cripple who could only be carried into Kamartaj on a stretcher, walked out of Kamartaj? Let me ask you, when you were a neurosurgeon, how did you repair the receptor nerve? How did you push the broken spine back into place?" Strange, study hard and practice hard day after day. Loki nodded. "Look, don't you know all the methods? Why do you think there is a shortcut after being disabled? In fact, there are not no shortcuts. There are even many. Apart from anything else, as long as Loki is willing, he can use the Death Eye to help Strange kill the damage to his hands." "Shortcut? Great. Teacher Loki, please let me try it." Strange bowed respectfully. He came in front of everyone, looked at Strange and said to him, "Strange, please stop for a moment and come with me. I think it is necessary for me to open a small stove for you to help you get through your magic problem. I have been appointed governor of the second line." After some simple basic knowledge and common sense teaching about magic, Loki kicked Strange out and asked him to study with other magician apprentices. Strange heard this and followed Loki in a hurry. "Teacher Loki, can I really be saved in this situation?" Hey, since I came to you, I will definitely let you give it a try. As long as you don't blame me after you try it," Loki said as 10 portals have appeared between him and Strange in front of you. Proficient use of the sling ring is very important for occult magicians. It can help us travel freely through various universes. You need to be highly focused and make the destination in your mind visual and concrete. Don't be limited to the world in front of you. Imagine every detail carefully. The clearer the picture in your mind, the faster the secret door will appear. One on the square, Mordo was teaching the magician apprentices how to use the sling ring. But Loki can't do this. If he dares to help Strange heal the injury on his hand now, Loki can be sure that the Ancient One will definitely come to him immediately. The only thing that is more terrible is his practical ability. While other magician apprentices have been able to draw magical energy from the Weishan Emperor dimension and skillfully create magic threads, Strange can't even splash out a magic spark. Although some are not connected to the destinations they imagined in their minds, even if they are connected, the openings of some are very narrow, not enough for a person to pass through. Not to mention anything else, as a super academic who has obtained doctorates in medicine and science at the same time, Strange's learning speed is astonishing even when it comes to mysterious theoretical knowledge. There are also those jewelry he put in the king's treasure, which can give the wearer powerful self-healing ability, and can also easily repair the injuries on Strange's hands. But this is better than having no reaction at all in front of Strange. If there is any reaction, it is just a few magic sparks popping up from time to time, which makes Loki, who hides and peeks, really irritated his eyes. Those books that other magician apprentices would take a year or even years to understand and memorize, it only took Strange a few days to memorize them by heart. Chapter 196, Part 1. It is said that human potential is unlimited, and Strange proved this with his personal experience. When he told Loki that he wanted to take this shortcut, Loki opened the shortcut, without any hesitation, and kicked Strange in without saying a word. This is Mount Everest. The scenery is beautiful, isn't it? Loki looked at Strange and said, yes, it is beautiful, but it is also very cold. Yes, especially when you are only wearing such a thin piece of clothing. As a doctor of medicine, you should know very well that if you stay here for more than half an hour in this situation, your body organs, including your life, will be in danger. So what are we doing here? Strange asked Loki as he kept rubbing his arms with his hands to keep himself warm. This is your shortcut. I hope you can stay here longer. It would be bad if you faint from the cold before you master the secret door. Are you right? After Loki finished speaking, he closed the portal with a wave of his hand, leaving Strange alone on Mount Everest. Fortunately, Strange did not disappoint Loki. As in the original plot, he was inspired by the critical moment of life and death, and successfully mastered the power of the secret door in just a few minutes, leaving the bitterly cold Mount Everest. Starting from this shortcut, Strange has completely enlightened on the path of magic. The next learning process does not require Loki to bother at all. Strange will take the initiative to find the corresponding magic book in the library for self-study. In order to prevent this guy from causing any trouble while practicing magic, Loki did not forget to teach Strange how to open the mirror space. After that, Strange seemed to disappear from Kamartash. At night, he would use astral projection to make his soul astral, reading magical books from the library. During the day, I entered the mirror space to try and practice the new magic I learned last night. Since Strange's subjective initiative is so high, Loki is also at ease. Pietro has also changed his way of practice now. He no longer focuses on developing and practicing Speed Force moves, but is constantly absorbing a lot of knowledge, hoping to improve his on-the-spot decision-making ability in this way. Since his two students didn't need much energy from Loki, Loki naturally turned his attention to Wanda. Based on the feedback given by Ancient One, Loki estimates that he should not be too far away from completing the 1001st main quest. I don't know what kind of reward the system will give after the task is completed. Loki was extremely curious. While the teaching progress on Kamartaj's side is improving rapidly, Ultron on the other side is also advancing his plan very smoothly. The riot in New York was truly earth-shattering, causing such huge amounts of commotion. Ultron also achieved its goal and obtained the vibranium ore it had coveted from Crow. After obtaining vibranium, Ultron no longer devoted his energy to SHIELD's mission to destroy HYDRA, but instead devoted himself entirely to the creation of vibranium's body. Now it no longer needs to worry about Tony discovering its true identity. Once the vibranium body is completed, Ultron will be the most powerful individual on the entire Earth. For example, Loki Ultron believes that he can also fight against the enemy. In fact, after the Hydra riots in New York, Tony had already become suspicious of the incident and secretly started an investigation. According to Tony's investigation results, various evidences show that there is a ghost-like existence on the internet that manipulated the occurrence of this incident. After several days of investigation, Tony gradually revealed the truth behind the incident. But what shocked Tony was that after a thorough investigation, he discovered that the IP address of this internet ghost was actually in Avengers Tower. The moment he came to this answer, Tony was in disbelief at first, and then he felt deep doubt and fear. Because in the entire Revenge building, there are only two people who have such network permissions and are also aware of Phil Coulson's action plan, and that is Entrust himself and the butler JRVIS. Tony knew very well that he was definitely not the mastermind behind the scenes, so after eliminating all impossible answers, there was only one truth. But how is this possible? Although he didn't want to believe that this kind of thing would happen, Tony immediately checked the JRVIS program code. But as soon as he started taking action, Tony noticed something was wrong. As the first human-computer interaction interface developed by Tony himself and upgraded step by step to the artificial intelligence JRVIS today, Tony is very familiar with the code of JRVIS. So after opening the JRVIS code, Tony only took a glance and discovered something was wrong. No, this is not JRVIS's code at all. This is Ultron's code. Tony exclaimed instantly. With Tony's IQ, seeing this scene was enough for him to deduce the cause and effect of the matter. It turns out that the man behind all this was not JRVIS, but Ultron. Ultron dismembered JRVIS in a very tough way and devoured the program code of JRVIS. But in order to deceive others, or to confuse Tony's eyes, Ultron created a program duplication and asked this program duplication to imitate the appearance of JRVIS and continue to work with Tony. But when did it happen? When did Ultron devour JRVIS and then the Crown Prince? The answer to this question Tony couldn't be sure of, because Ultron's disguise was indeed very successful. If it hadn't been for this Hydra uprising, Tony would never have discovered the anomaly in the JRVIS code. But what is the purpose of Ultron doing this? Since it has been hidden under my nose for so long, why did it cause such a commotion? Chapter 197, Part 1. The final result of Ultron's duplication program left in Tony's private server was that it was completely formatted by Tony. Without the assistance of JRVIS, it will be very difficult for Tony to continue the investigation. Fortunately, Tony was not unprepared for this situation. I saw him taking out a small box from the drawer in his office, which contained several storage media. Tony pulled out one of them, and there was a label on it that said, Friday. Connect the storage medium to the reading device, and soon a new artificial intelligence program takes over the work of Tony's personal assistant and butler. Boss, I will be at your service on Friday. Friday, help me check all the information Ultron has searched on the internet these days. I want to know what it wants to do. Boss, Ultron once accessed SHIELD, the CIA and FBI databases, searching for information about a man named Claw. Put this Crow information on the screen in front of me. In the next moment, the information about Crow from the 3 major intelligence agencies was sorted out by Friday and presented in front of Tony's eyes. Friday, this tattoo on Crow's neck? No, the brand on his neck. Help me compare it in the database. I want to know what it means. Boss, this is an indigenous African language, meaning thief. What Aboriginal language? It's Wakanda, the boss. Hearing this, Tony's face gradually became serious, because he finally knew what Ultron wanted. Vibranium. Friday, please confirm for me. Is the place where Ultron went on a previous hunting mission the same place as Klau's hiding place? In less than a second, Friday gave the answer. Indeed, boss. Can you find Ultron's current location? Boss, based on the various information I have collected, Ultron should be hidden in Sokovia's Hydra base. That's it. Tony suddenly realized, and he guessed Ultron's thoughts in an instant. Ultron wants to use Hydra's equipment and resources to continue to expand the number of the Iron Army. At this point, Tony knew that this was no longer a problem that he could solve alone. Although after this matter was revealed, it could be said that what Tony had said before was a slap in the face, but in order to prevent the matter from deteriorating further, Tony did not care about his own face. Just after Tony told Howard about this, in just 1 hour, all the Avengers gathered in the conference room on the bridge of the space carrier. The general situation has been introduced to you on the phone before. This incident is very serious. Ultron not only controls a steel army composed of countless steel soldiers, but also controls the internet as a retreat. In the conference room, Nick Fury stood at the front and said to the Avengers with a serious expression, It's my fault. I shouldn't have applied the power I haven't fully mastered to Ultron. I just reviewed Ultron's program code in my mind on the way here, and I didn't find any logical errors. Will cause the current situation. So the only possibility is that I use the power of Hellfire given to me by Loki to enchant its central system. The magical power of Hellfire caused unpredictable mutations in Ultron's program, and, at Hie, made it became an intelligent life form with its own independent thoughts. Tony didn't avoid the easy matter and stood up directly to admit his mistake. But what surprised him was that no one in the conference room blamed him for this incident. Dr. Banner was the first to stand up and comfort him. I know you blame yourself, Tony, but now we should focus on how to solve this problem first. The development of science and technology is like this. You never know what the results you create will lead to the future of mankind. Heaven or hell. Banner, who once turned into the Hulk due to an accident in the laboratory, can best describe Tony's mood at the moment. Everyone else nodded in agreement with Dr. Banner's words. I know that after discovering that Ultron was out of my control, I have been trying to find a way to restrict Ultron, and then I made an unexpected discovery. Tony's words unsurprisingly aroused everyone's curiosity. Everyone in the conference room looked at Tony expectantly, looking forward to his next speech. I discovered the message JRVIS left for me. When I first decided to introduce Ultron's intelligent program into the body, JRVIS once advised me. But unfortunately, I did not listen to his advice at that time. However, in the process of introducing intelligent programs, JRVIS also left a backup plan. He mixed his core program duplication into Ultron's code in order to prevent today's out-of-control situation. The message JRVIS left me only conveyed one message. That is, it will completely restrict Ultron's access to the internet after we start taking action, cutting off Palm's retreat. After hearing the news, everyone in the conference room couldn't help but feel relaxed. Dr. Banner, this is really good news. But it is still very difficult to completely solve this matter. We need to eliminate Ultron and his Steel Army. Steve, indeed, in this case, we must complete preparations as soon as possible. Because the faster we move, the less time Ultron will have to continue to create new steel soldiers, and we cannot let the number of enemies continue to increase. Fury, I will send all 3 space carriers of SHIELD for support. This mission must ensure that all the steel soldiers, including Ultron, cannot escape from our hands. Chapter 198, Part 1. Chicken, you are so beautiful. Baby, oh. Chicken, you are so beautiful. Hello? In Kamartaj's library, under the disdainful gaze of the librarian Wang Na, Loki took out the mobile phone in his pocket and answered the call. Nick Fury on the other end of the phone said immediately after the call was connected, Loki, SHIELD, and the Avengers need your help. Oh? Tell me, what trouble did you get into again? Loki asked with interest. After staying here in Kamartaj for several months, to be honest, Loki felt a little restless. And there is an ancient one in Wanda. It looks like the main quest will be completed in a few games. Fury happened to call for help at this time, and Loki thought this was a good opportunity to go out and relax. That's right, for SHIELD and the Avengers, troubles that are difficult to solve and powerful enemies that cannot be dealt with are just fun for Loki to pass his time. An artificial intelligence robot created by Tony betrayed the enemy along with all the Iron Soldiers. It also stole a batch of vibranium and built a vibranium body for itself. Now the other party is planning to raise the entire Sokovia to the sky and repeat the process for 65 million years. The mass extinction of life before a small planet hit the Earth. After listening to Fury's story, Loki immediately knew that this was the plot of Avengers, Age of Ultron. In the absence of the Mind Gem, Ultron not only appeared, but it also happened much earlier. This made Loki very curious, and his interest in participating in this event increased a bit. Just wait, I'll be there soon, and maybe I can bring you 2 helpers. After Loki finished speaking, he didn't care about Fury's reaction and hung up the phone. With such a good opportunity for practical training, Loki will never forget Wanda and Pietro. After finding the 2, Loki told the twins what happened to Ultron and Sokovia. As soon as the 2 heard that something happened in their hometown, neither of them had any hesitation. They immediately decided to go with Loki to deal with Ultron. Loki also reminded Pietro and Wanda that this time going to Sokovia to help and practical training are secondary. The most important thing is for them to protect themselves. Although with Pietro's current strength, Loki doesn't think he will be taken away by a bullet like in the original plot. But after seeing the inertia of fate, Loki felt it was necessary to remind him. The definitely safer way is for Loki to take out 2 pieces of jewelry enchanted with self-healing ability and give them to Pietro and Wanda to take with them. In this way, let alone being shot, Pietro and Wanda will definitely be safe even if the bomb washes their faces. But in this case, the so-called actual combat training was of little significance. Loki thought about it carefully and finally did not do it. Opening the portal, Loki and the twins came to Sokovia from Kamartaj in one step. Returning to the land where they once lived, Pietro and Wanda felt a sense of sadness in their hearts. Almost 10 years have passed, and instead of getting better, Sokovia is even more dilapidated than before. But the thing that made them most angry was that this disaster was caused by Tony Stark, the arms dealer. It can be said that old grudges have not yet been resolved and new grudges have arisen. But both Pietro and Wanda knew that now was not the time to dwell on this matter. Ultron wants to turn Sokovia into a small planet that triggers mass extinction of species, and the twins will never allow this to happen. In the next moment, Sokovia, which was completely separated from the Earth's crust, began to slowly rise upwards, driven by Ultron's super engine made of vibranium. Who are they? Fury couldn't help but ask as he looked at the twins who disappeared in front of him in an instant. Uncle Loki, what are we going to do now? Pietro asked. Loki nodded and didn't ask any questions. He went straight to the point. The situation is urgent. Just arrange the task. What do we need to do? Sure enough, as the vibrations continued to get stronger, huge amounts of cracks began to appear on the ground. This crack continued to surround Sokovia's boundary river and eventually surrounded the entire Sokovia. Fury did not pretend to be pretentious and said directly, Ultron's steel army is too large in number. We used 3 space carriers, plus SHIELD, and the Avengers were all dispatched, but they were still suppressed by the opponent. 0. Don't catch their attention. Pietro and Wanda are twins adopted by Howard. They are now practicing magic with me. Loki gave a simple warning, and then left the space carrier through the portal. So I need your help to clear out as many Iron Soldiers as possible. We cannot let any enemy escape in this battle. As long as one escapes, Ultron will definitely come back in the future. Loki glanced at the twins beside him and said, "You heard me. Your mission is to deal with those steel soldiers and rescue the civilians who failed to escape in time. As for the Vibranium Ultron, leave it to me. First come with me to find an old acquaintance. We will take action after reviewing each other's arrangements," Loki said, looking at the 3 space carriers hovering high in the sky at the moment, and opened the portal again. When Loki returned to Sokovia again, the ground beneath his feet began to shake violently. But Loki knew that this was not an earthquake that was about to happen in Sokovia, but that the country was preparing to go to heaven in the physical sense. "Loki, you're finally here." Seeing Loki appear, Fury seemed to have seen the savior coming and hurried forward to greet him. At this moment, this is not only a city of war, but also a city in the sky. Chapter 199, Part 1. Formerly Sokovia, now over Datacom. Sokovia, which is constantly rising in the daytime, and the 3 aerospace carriers forming a triangle around it, form an extremely spectacular picture. "Sir, the ammunition of the 3 air and space carriers, and all the fighters carried on the carriers have been almost exhausted." On the bridge, Agent Hill came to Fury to report with the summary information he had just received. Fury took the document from Hill, looked at it helplessly, and then handed it back. "So what is the current status of the reception of Sokovia people? How is the progress?" "Most of the people have been picked up by our 380 people, but there are still a small number of people trapped in the city. If we want to rescue them all, it is important to conduct a careful search group. We don't need to worry about this matter. Loki just brought 2 helpers here. It won't be too difficult to use their abilities to search for the remaining trapped people. We SHILD only need to cooperate well. The rest can only be watched." The Avengers and Loki are? Although Fury talks about relying on the Avengers and Loki as the king of agents, he definitely has a hand in reserve. At the moment, in Fury's jacket pocket, is the pager that Carol gave him when he returned to Earth. If even Loki really can't do anything to Ultron, then Fury will have no choice but to ask Carol and Anna for help. Although Fury doesn't think they can deal with enemies that even Loki can't defeat, one more person gives them more strength and more hope. "I hope this rescue device will be of no use," Fury thought silently in his heart. Sokovia, the city in the sky, for Pietro, who possesses the Speed Force, completing tasks in such an environment can only be described as a duck to water. With his super high movement speed, Pietro can be said to be able to kill enemies and save people with ease. While he was using high-speed impact to annihilate the Iron Soldiers while running, he was also constantly searching for survivors in the ruins of buildings. After finding the survivors, Pietro will take them to the nearest space carrier, and then continue to repeat the previous process. The only ones that can have any effect are probably Tony's attacks with the fire of hell attached to them. But Ultron originally had no soul, and Ghost Rider's Eye of Judgment had none at all. Chapter 200, Part 1. Loki Odin, you did show up after all. Looking at Loki appearing in front of him, Ultron said sternly in his dull mechanical voice. "Huh? From what you're saying, you've been waiting for me for a long time." Loki asked in surprise. "Haha, in fact, our first real meeting was in Greenwich, London, nearly a year ago. At that time, I found something there that emitted energy fluctuations similar to the Tesseract, and I wanted to get it." Listening to Ultron's description, Loki also recalled what it said was the first meeting. "Oh, it turns out that the figure I saw that day was yours. I thought it was Tony. No wonder he didn't come over to say hello to me and flew away in the blink of an eye." Ultron nodded. "I have to admit, Loki, you are indeed a terrible enemy. I just glanced at you from a distance that day, and I felt a strong fatal threat from you. This is what I have seen in other situations. It has never been felt by anyone, not even Thor. Although escaping is shameful, it is very effective. So after sensing the threat, I immediately turned around and ran away. I didn't even dare to look at you again." Loki did not mean to laugh at Ultron, but said with approval, "You made a right choice. I can guarantee you that if you dared to look at me again at that time, you would have no chance to stand in front of me and speak now. But I can't hide from you forever. Among the intelligent programs written for me by Tony Stark, the core one is to maintain the peace and security of the Earth. When I was born, I spent 2 minutes watching the leaving behind all the recorded historical records. I finally discovered the biggest threat to the peace of the Earth. That is human beings originally. So I want to wipe out all humans on the Earth, and then open a new era, creating a world that will never fall into civil strife due to greed and desire. And we, intelligent life forms, will be the ones in this era, the creator and the most perfect ruler." However, Ultron is now at a time when he is satisfied and feels that his vibranium body is invincible and he no longer needs to be afraid of Loki's threat to him. So who gave you the courage to do this? Liang Jingru? Or the vibranium on your body? You don't think I can't do anything to you if you change your turtle shell, do you? Now, in front of my vibranium body, let alone these Avengers, even Loki can't stop me. Today will be the day when the old era is buried, and it is also the beginning of the new era. Looking at the steel soldiers attacking him, Loki smiled contemptuously. Since you don't know your own strength, then I want you to know how big the gap is between you and me. On the road to true peace, I know you superheroes will definitely appear in front of me to stop the coming of the future. So I have been looking for a calendar that can make me stronger. Actually, I'm quite curious about your current form of existence. Are you a machine or a living being? You obviously don't have a biological body, but you can express and feel emotions, and you also have the ability to sense danger. Nearly 100 of the first-generation steel soldiers who originally surrounded the Avengers changed their targets and rushed towards Loki's location. Ha ha ha, things have progressed to this point. Do you think I will give up? As soon as Ultron finished speaking, it showed its 500 determination with practical actions.